you. Happy Thursday. A lot to cover today. Oh my gosh. So let's try to get through it all. Hope you're doing well. First and foremost, we're going to talk about the Ukraine mineral deal. Oh my God.
I've
Everyone's
heard great
favorite.
things about this deal.
So actually, very, very interesting. Adam had made a prediction.
I
Okay.
did look, and people thought you disagreed with me, but I thought you were ambivalent about my prediction.
You're correct. I would say ambivalent.
Yeah,
Yeah, I was kind of like, I could go either way. I could go either way. I think
yeah.
listen, I think I was like 10%, 10% more leaning against your prediction, but I was still
So
like
90%
40%.
in favor? No, I
No,
felt
no,
I
no.
felt like you were 90% ambivalent. Like people in the comments said that you disagreed with me, and I was like, well, I no, he didn't disagree with me. And I mean, we even talked about it afterwards. We were DMing about it. So
Ambivalent is like 50-50, I would say,
okay,
right? Like you're like,
okay, I get
maybe,
it. Yeah,
maybe, right?
I get your
But
framing.
I'll say
Sure.
I was really like 40% on you, 60% not. So I was like 10% away from like
Okay. And for
away.
those of you who missed it, my prediction was that Trump was kind of going to be forced into adopting the status quo that the Biden administration had in supporting Ukraine financially, but not with troops. And that he was looking for a way to sell that to his base because obviously he said, look, like I think his base wants him to completely abandon Ukraine, pull out. If he pulls out, I mean, I think Europe would ultimately step up, but that would just make America look weak. And
Yes.
I don't think Trump wants to look weak. He doesn't want to look weak. He doesn't want America to look weak. So he's kind of in this conflicted state. And the way to maintain the status quo is for him to find some way to sell it to his base. And then in walks the mineral deal, right? Oh, we're going to make everything back on that we've spent there. So that's kind of his way to sell it to his base. And so I brought this up. You seemed ambivalent about it, but now you're saying you're like 60% thinking that that might be the case, 40% that it might
Well,
not
now
be
I
the
flip
case.
flop. At first I was like 60% thinking like maybe not, 40% thinking maybe so. But
Hmm.
now I'm on the other side. Now I'm like 80% on your prediction being correct.
Oh, okay. So look, if my prediction comes true, win for A team, obviously.
New information has since come out. Now to be
Oh,
clear,
okay.
so
Good.
important part about your prediction was that you were saying that you thought Trump, talked to Putin, seemed to get a sense that there wasn't really going to be a peace deal. And he didn't want to pull all funding out of Ukraine because it would look horrible for him. And so he's basically using the mineral deal as just this kind of like, down the
Subterfuge.
road
Yeah.
future goal for the MAGA movement to justify US continuing to spend money in Ukraine,
Yeah,
essentially.
their argument has always been we need to spend the money on American citizens, not
Right.
in Ukraine, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's their goal. So
So right, and I was more my 60% against that was like, well, I thought just Trump just wanted this deal and just kind of wanted to end the situation. Like wasn't really thinking in that direction. But now I've been more inclined to believe what you're saying is seems to be the case, judging by Trump's new comments about this deal. So
he
we're gonna play this comments and then we're gonna go over the deal because it's a little confusing what exactly the deal is.
right. Just also Putin, like Putin doesn't he's not going to leave Ukraine, okay? He wants all of Ukraine. He sees all of Ukraine as part of Russia.
Right.
So I don't what can Trump offer Putin to make him go home? Like nothing. Nothing.
Yeah, it really depends on how, as I said, it depends on what the facts of the ground are in Russia in terms of how Russia going to be better off of the war continuing financially and for his own power, or better, do they really need to end it because they're just, losing too much money, too much support in the country? And
Well,
I'm
right
kind of,
now I
it's like
think
a
they
lot
have
of
a
mixed
stalemate.
reporting. It's
Yeah.
kind of a
Oh
mixed
yeah.
reporting, so it's hard to kind of get to the bottom of that. So
Right now they're at a stalemate. I think they've been at a stalemate for 2 years, holding forces. So,
right.
and it seems like if they've been at a stalemate for 2 years, they can be at that stalemate for 10 years, right?
Well,
Because
here's my
they're like in a
question.
sustainable
Right.
situation. Yeah.
Well, and if Trump, tries to get this deal with Putin and can't get anything done, will it be a final SDFU for all the America bad people that are like, oh, the America could just easily have come up with some deal with Russia, and they're just not doing it because America is evil and bad, and the West is bad, and Russia is totally willing to make a deal. If even Trump can't get a deal with Russia, would it finally be the massive SDFU? You don't know what the hell you're talking about. Russia's obviously not coming to the table.
For you and me, but too many other people are invested in that narrative. They're never going to let it go, Sitch. You're being far too optimistic if you think reality is going to step in and make people change their minds.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's there is this weird alignment on the far left and sort of the far right in terms of the America bad narrative. Because even I forget that guy. What's that guy's name? On Breaking Points.
Yes, yeah, all the Russia simps, all the Ukraine haters. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right, I forget his name. The guy on Breaking Points, who's one of the main
Scott Horton is one of them. I think Scott Horton comes at it from a left-wing perspective. I know what you're saying, though. You're saying, look, people on the left also have this notion that we could just magically strike a deal and end the war. It's so bizarre because it's yes, everybody wants the war to end. The only person capable of ending the war is the person that started the fucking war, right?
Right.
Yeah. And I don't know who thinks that you can whisper sweet nothings into Putin's ear. I mean, you must not have read anything on Putin.
Right.
There's tons of inside accounts of people who've been close to Putin. We know a lot about Putin. Okay.
Right. No, but what I was going to say is, thank you, chat. Ryan Grimm is the name.
Oh, okay.
Who sometimes he says things I agree, sometimes he says things I strongly disagree with. He was even kind of repeating this lie about how America had the opportunity to end to come to the negotiating table and end the war before it even started.
I remember that, yeah.
And I was like, okay, is that true? I very clearly remember that as Russia was building up its forces on the border in Ukraine, not only were so many people denying that there was going to be a war, but that America did try to have some sort of talk or negotiation or dialogue with Russia several times before the actual invasion, and Russia refused. So I looked it up. I did a little Google search, did a timeline restriction, and lo and behold, my memory was completely correct. Right as they were building up the month before the war, U.S. repeatedly tried to have meetings to talk with Russia about, not invading Ukraine, and Russia simultaneously didn't want to have the meeting and kept saying that they were not going to invade Ukraine until obviously they did. So
right.
Just complete fabrication. But anyway, okay, so let's watch.
Just before we go, look, obviously rumors have it that Trump has a girlfriend, and I noticed this really short skirt here on the side. What's going on here? Is that
the girl? Is that the woman?
Is this a Trump tweet girl that follows Trump around? Look, she's got a big binder, she prints stuff out for Trump all day. That could be her.
Maybe that's the there's some rumor. I had not heard of this. It was from the what was the name of that podcast that you love so much?
The two catty bitches.
The two catty bitches podcast.
I don't know the name of the podcast, but it is
or something, right?
It is two catty bitches.
The two catty bitches podcast. Yeah, there's some rumor. I'd never even heard of this. They talked about it of that the woman who there's some woman who controls Trump's Twitter account, or X account, and prints out things for him to read. The rumor, supposedly, I have no clue where the source comes from, is that she's so infatuated with Donald Trump that the Secret Service is worried that she's a yandere, that she's going to do something crazy.
Exactly. She's going full Fatal Attraction. Look, there's a big stack of stuff on that table there. That's probably hers. That's probably her right there.
There you go.
Look at this skirt. That is not an appropriate skirt to wear if you're in this
the Oval
position.
Office. Yeah. There you go.
That's the shortest skirt.
That's a very short skirt for the Oval Office.
That's not good.
You don't think
good.
The president should have a bunch of hot women in short skirts behind him at all press conferences, just to keep people's attention when he's talking about boring political stuff?
Inappropriate.
Okay.
Inappropriate.
Wow.
Especially for a man.
Prude. Look at this.
Especially for a man of this age.
Who's married.
I know. It's so bad. Anyway. All right.
Let's watch a minute of this.
It shouldn't have happened, but it did happen, so we have to straighten it out. But the American taxpayer now is going to get their money back plus.
Mr. President, yesterday with Emmanuel Macron, you said you had spoken to Putin about the idea of peacekeepers in Ukraine, that Putin was fine with it. The Kremlin, I guess, has said that that's actually unacceptable to them. What's real here?
That's not what I was told. but you're going to need some form of peacekeeping. So something will be done that's going to be satisfactory to everybody. We need peacekeeping too.
Any situation where there's American troops involved?
It's actually something I did discuss, but a form of peacekeeping that's acceptable to everybody. Ultimately, we'll be able to agree on something.
Oh my God.
So that's kind of interesting because there are a lot of talks about having a European peacekeeping force there. And Trump made the claim, we watched it the other day, he made the claim that he had this conversation with Putin, he was fine with it, and now Putin's like, I never said that, so that's kind of interesting.
I cannot imagine Putin saying that. I can't fathom it. Can you?
I cannot fathom, well, I can fathom it, but I would be skeptical of the claim. So I was surprised when I heard Trump say it. I said, oh, that's interesting. Okay.
You're going to bring peacekeepers in? No.
It depends. If he really does want to end the war, then yeah, he would be fine with it. If he doesn't want to end the war, then obviously he wouldn't be fine with it.
Trump or Putin is throwing North Korean troops in, which is kind of interesting, right? And I think they're saying that they're not North Korean. I think that they're saying they're Russian, because haven't they captured some of them that are obviously North Korean, but they've got like Russian passports and
they're
stuff like
lying.
that.
Yes.
They're totally lying. Yeah, exactly. But can you, like, it's such a provocation that they can throw in troops from another country, but as soon as European troops step in, they're going to be like, it's on.
Right.
Yeah. I don't, even if we pull out completely and we look like massive wusses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Europe takes over, Europe can still bring us into a world war, because like France is in NATO, right?
Yeah.
And if there's an attack
Poland
on,
is all those surrounding countries except for Ukraine are in NATO. So,
yeah, exactly. So if a bunch of Polish troops, or if they invade Poland because Polish troops are in Ukraine, then we're in it. Otherwise, we're saying, look, we're just going to leave NATO. God, can you imagine? Oh my God.
They wanted to have there were rumblings about there was going to be some weird deal where there was going to be European forces that patrolled the border to keep the peace once a peace agreement was made.
Mm-hmm.
And if those troops were attacked by Russia, it would not trigger Article 5 of NATO, which is very bizarre.
What?
Yes.
What? Is this recent? You just read this?
This was a few days ago.
God.
This was all kind of the rumors about what some potential deal could look like. So
you could just attack the Polish troops inside Poland and it's okay.
Well, no. It would be no. It would be the Polish troops or the French troops in Ukraine that were keeping.
In Ukraine.
Yeah,
okay.
not in the.
I got you.
Yeah.
Which makes sense if they're joining the battlefield. Then.
Well, again, it wasn't supposed to be that they were going to join the battle. It was supposed to be like in a theoretical situation where Russia and Ukraine agreed to a ceasefire or a peace deal, and then they would just maintain that peace. They'd be like the referees to make sure, essentially.
Yeah, no, I get it. They're trying to limit it to the battlefield and trying not to get NATO involved. It's kind of weird because, I mean, until somebody gives Putin a black eye, I don't think he's ever going to leave. So,
and it's good to see that Trump is talking about that Ukraine does need a security guarantee, because there is no security guarantee in the mineral deal, but it's good to see them talking about that there does need to be some security guarantee for a broader peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine, obviously.
Ukraine, I don't know if you remember this, but Ukraine launched an offensive mission to sink ships, Ukrainian ships around Crimea. And Elon Musk put the kibosh on it by denying their access to Starlink for offensive measures.
Right.
If they sunk a bunch of ships, they might have ended the war right there. Elon Musk might have fucked this whole thing up. Right?
Right. Yeah, I don't know if that alone would have been enough to end the war, but it definitely would change the calculation for Putin. So.
I don't know. If they sink half of the Russian fleet, I think Putin might be thinking, oh, maybe I should go home.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it might make him fight even harder. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah. So more of this?
Yeah.
With Ukraine and this mineral deal, what does Ukraine get in return, Mr. President?
The question was, because it's important. He says, in terms of the Ukraine mineral deal, what does Ukraine get out of the deal?
Right, exactly. Normally, when there's an exchange, right, there's a fair exchange of goods.
Normally, they're supposed to be, yes.
You give us all your rare earth minerals, and then we leave with them. What do you say?
I don't think anyone want to agree to that. That doesn't seem like a good deal.
Oh, you don't think so? You think
Yeah.
that's a bad move?
Like a bad move.
That's a bad deal.
$350 billion and lots of equipment and military equipment and the right to fight on and
Ooh.
Ooh. See, now, that's a very key phrase. He said they have the right to fight on. See, I heard this and I said, oh, that's why I sent this to you and said, this is a good indication that your prediction was correct. Because he
Yeah.
said the right to fight on.
He's basically laying out the status quo here, is he not? Oh yeah, we're going to
Yes.
continue to send them military equipment. We're going to continue to let them fight the Russians to try and get them out of their country.
Right.
This is fucking the status quo.
So things are looking more like your prediction is accurate.
Look at this.
originally the right to fight. Look, Ukraine, I will say they're very brave and they're good soldiers, but without the United States and its money and its military equipment, this war would have been over in a very short period of time. In fact, I was the one that gave the javelins. You remember the famous javelins? That was me. That wasn't Obama. It wasn't Biden. It wasn't anybody else. It was me. And they wiped out a lot of tanks with those javelins. And the expression was that Obama gave sheets and I gave the javelins. That was a big deal at the time. It wiped out. That was the beginning when people said, wow, that's something. Well, that was American equipment.
It has to be losing their minds over that.
Isn't this interesting? Such a difference in posturing than we've heard for the last week.
I know. Look at this. So during his first term, he gave them the javelins.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess before. I mean, obviously this is before because Russia invaded. You know, when like a year or two into Biden's presidency. So this is when there was just the continuing conflict going on between them.
I think
After
when the
Crimea.
history books are written, it's going to be clear that KGB knew Biden's brain was spaghetti, and that factored into Putin. Look, because the commander in chief is out to lunch. This is time to play hardball, right? Why wouldn't you go after your objectives? Seems safer than when you've got someone at the wheel in the
Maybe.
United States.
I think even if if say Biden didn't run, it was some other person.
Mm-hmm.
I think even if it was Trump's second term, I think they were waiting to see what would happen in the next election. They're waiting for COVID to end, and COVID ends, and then they're like, okay, now it's go time, baby.
Yeah, I don't know. It's such a cakewalk with Biden being out to lunch, though.
Yeah,
Really
but
is.
the problem is it turned out to not be. It's the exact opposite, right? You know, the Democrats had a very, very, and actually is if that was the thought process from Putin, it was a total, whoever came up with that analysis was retarded. Because even if you say that Biden is totally weak in a Bernie's, puppet, whatever, his analyst should have known the Democrats hate Russia right now, like super, super, super hate Russia right now. They're going to push really hard on Russia. They don't want to appear weak on Russia, especially if they start invading Ukraine. Obviously, they're going to push back. Obviously, they're going to send money to Ukraine. Like, it would actually make more sense if Trump had won again to try to invade then, because you think, okay, well, the MAGA base is sort of like wishy-washy on Russia. And Trump is kind of in that like weirder political position on Russia.
I agree with everything that you're saying. The X factor for me is obviously Obama did the red lines and then cucked out on them.
I think that was probably the most impactful thing on the decision to invade again, is to say Obama did a red line, nothing happened, so Russia assumed that would happen again.
Well, Biden also prevented them from doing offensive measures into Russia the entire time. If Trump was president, maybe Trump says, "Hell yeah, push to Moscow, you guys." That's the counter argument. I agree with everything you're saying. I don't know if Trump would be that brazen to do something like that. And now Trump's second term, I'm not sure that he is either, but
yeah, no, I think if Trump was president, I still think Russia still would have invaded. I think everything would have played out the way it did, except, well, the difference would be I don't know if Trump's administration would have been so on top of it from the get-go, because the Biden administration was super like, they're going to invade, they're going to invade, they're going to invade. Like they were super on top of it before it happened, like 2 to 3 months trying to
Yeah,
prevent it.
Biden's people were obviously.
Yeah, Biden's team was really on top of it. I don't know if Trump's team was on top of it. So I think that would have had a huge impact in terms of the readiness, that maybe Russia would have had a better job at catching Ukraine with its pants down. But assuming that didn't happen and the war kind of continued the same way it went, I think the benefit of Trump being president would have been, I don't think he doesn't engage in this tactic, which I agree with is a stupid tactic, of like, we're not going to continually try to talk to the leadership and get some deal worked out. I think he would have tried to do that the whole time.
Right,
I don't know if he would
right.
have been able to do anything, right? I think it still would have gone on for years and years and years, but
Right. Yeah, it's a tough situation. I listen to a lot of these, a lot of content on the Ukraine thing just because I find it fascinating. And I am persuaded by the argument that this isn't going to end until somebody gives Putin a black eye, until Putin suffers some tangible damage. And the Biden administration just seemed completely against that. Well, because they didn't want to escalate to World War III. So
mm-hmm. Right.
that's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Without American equipment, this war would have been over very quickly, and American money too. I mean, a lot of money.
He doesn't say how the war would be over. The war would
No,
be
of course
over
not.
because Ukraine would be part of Russia. That's how it would be over.
Right.
Yeah, Zelensky would be dead, and that's that.
Money.
So
When you, Mr. President,
that war fighting equipment and the ammunition, that's sustained going forward for Ukraine, and how long is it sustained?
Well,
Are we going to provide the ammunition that will sustain Ukraine, and how long are we going to sustain them for? That was the question.
it could go forward for a while, and maybe until we have a deal with Russia. Look, we need to have a deal with Russia, otherwise it's going to continue. But now when Americans put up their money, the taxpayer money, and the president approves it, we're getting our money back in some form. But it could go on for a while, or it could be settled quickly. I think it's going to be settled quickly. I spoke with President Putin. I think he wants to settle it, and wants to get on with life. It's horrible. What's happening, horrible.
He knows this. He's just saying this with zero confidence. The old Trump confidence isn't there, guys.
No.
He knows Putin is like stringing him along, and Trump is smart enough. He's been in situations where he's dealing with third parties or counterparties that are just, he knows they're fucking stringing him along, right?
Yeah.
You see this in business all the time. So unfortunately, in business, you can drop a lawsuit on them or put some pressure on them. I don't know that you can do that in this situation.
No,
unless you're going to say, look, we're going to arm Ukraine. We're going to let Ukraine march to Moscow. That's really the only option that you have. I've seen people saying that obviously America has the best military in the world, and that should be some form of leverage. It's not leverage unless you're ready to put troops on the ground. And politically, I don't think that's feasible.
Yeah. Here, so Zero Fox sent me this clip here. This is from today. This is
We have
very, very, very interesting. Okay. Let's see, 1735 here. This is a press conference from today.
We need a lot of things that, in some cases, we don't have here. So I think we're going to have a very good relationship, but the relationship between them is not the best.
Mr. President, do you still think that Mr. Zelensky is a dictator?
So the question was,
shit.
do you still think Zelensky is a dictator? That was the question.
Did I say that? I can't believe I said that. Next question.
Oh my. Oh my. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Wow, the rare walk, like the just super walk back. That's pretty rare from Trump. So total walk back. I mean, it's funny. I think that's a good way to do it, is make it like a joke. But look,
My.
very interesting, right?
Well, look, he's obviously that's a walk back. That's undeniably a walk back.
Yes. That's a good
I
way.
don't even remember saying that.
That's a good way. You got to remember that for the future. That's a good way to do a walk back. You just make it a joke. Like, did I say? Can't believe I said that. Okay, moving on. Okay, interesting. Okay,
He's been corrected.
so now I'm like even more. I'm like 99% in your prediction model.
Oh
here
my God! Look at
of
that.
of the continuing of the status quo. It's interesting because I don't. It's funny. I don't think anyone gave JD Vance the memo.
Yes,
Like,
look, and that was a great argument you brought out
right?
about
Because
the
it's like,
JD
yeah.
Vance stuff.
Well,
Yeah.
here's what I think the problem is, and Trump has repeatedly done this, is his tactic in a lot of these negotiations is when he's negotiating against you and he thinks you're not doing what he wants, there's like he'll just go like fucking nuclear. Like there's no holding back, just attack, attack, attack. And then as soon as there's some kind of agreement, he's like, oh, my good friends, my best friend in the world. I love you. It's like
It's
the same
true.
thing
It is
with Kim
true.
Jong-un, which I think that's totally fine in a business context. I'm not sure how that
Foreign
works
policy.
in a foreign policy conversation. People definitely read it very differently. So we'll see how that all works. And I'm also, I think it's going to take not really the left. I think it's going to take the MAGA base, like their head's going to spin because a lot of the MAGA people were like very happy that Trump was shitting all over Zelensky. And now if he starts to walk this stuff back and he's like, oh, my good friend Zelensky, I don't know how they're going to react. I mean, they might just go along with it, but we'll see what happens.
Here's the counter argument on the JD Vance stuff, because at this point, Trump is really trying to get a deal with Ukraine so that he can sell the status quo to the MAGA base. So he could be unleashing JD Vance to get that deal. Like that deal he thinks is possible because we have overwhelming leverage over Ukraine. Obviously, if we pull all their weapons and support, they're like sitting ducks. It's funny because I think Zelensky this is why he's turning to Europe, because if Europe steps up, then he has more leverage with the United States. And he might already have deals like that in place. So that's why he's playing harder on the mineral deal.
Yeah, no, I understand the thought process, but it's because again, like when you're doing business, you're just worrying about like getting the people
No,
who you want.
look, I agree with you.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about like
100%
the voting base,
on that.
right?
Yeah.
And like how the perception of all this stuff is.
No, everything about this being different than business, foreign policy being different than business, I completely agree with you.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
foreign policy ends up in soldiers getting killed. I mean, that's where the negotiations end. In business, the negotiations end in both parties walk away. Sometimes there's legal entanglements, right? Sometimes there's lawsuits, but
hey,
it's
listen,
very much lower stakes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But hey, if it works and this brings about peace, then I'll be the first person to say, good job on Trump. Okay?
This is not,
he totally did it. If it all works out.
we got to
Russia
watch some
actually
Scott
agrees-
Adams, because I want to hear Scott Adams' response to this walk back here. Because Scott Adams probably came out and said wild shit about the Zelensky dictator shit. Like he's left all of MAGA in the lurch because they've got to be. They must have been making videos about this for days now, right? Oh, finally, Trump is calling out Zelensky for the dictator he is.
They'll just say it's a negotiation tactic.
Oh, you're right.
Against Russia.
You're right.
Is what they'll say. So.
Damn
I mean, to be fair, probably it is to some extent. But that's just what they'll say. They'll just say, "Oh, everything's fine. It's just negotiation tactic." Blah 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 blah.
So they're gonna still believe that Zelensky is a dictator. That's the thing. There's a truth claim here.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I think Scott Adams was already proven wrong, and that you were proven right in terms of that Trump understood that it would just be so disastrous to just pull funding from Ukraine and let them just with their dick in the wind, that it'd be so disastrous for his presidency if he did that. So
it would. Oh God.
So let me read I want to read parts of this deal. So this deal is kind of confusing and what it actually is saying. So I'm going to read parts of it and then we'll try to make some sense of this. Okay. So the deal was actually published in its entirety. I don't know if you're here. I can send you a link. I don't know if you want to bring it up or just you can look at Trump's beautiful.
I'll check it out.
Look at Trump's beautiful face. I like his little face.
Oh my
right there.
God.
He's been,
Sitch.
Got his hand caught in the cookie jar face. Okay.
Do you really think Trump has a beautiful face?
Oh, of course.
He's got a beautiful face.
Of course. Yes.
Here, I'll blow the face up for you just
Okay.
so we can see
Okay.
the. Did I really say that? That is the. I've been caught.
Yes. Yeah, it's the cookie jar face.
It is the cookie jar
Cookie
face.
jar face.
Oh, okay. We'll just go with that as we discuss the Ukraine deal.
Yes. Okay. Section 1. The governments of Ukraine and the United States, with the aim of achieving lasting peace in Ukraine, intend to establish a reconstruction investment fund. Right, this is important.
Mm-hmm.
Partnering in the fund through joint ownership to be further defined in the fund agreement. Okay. So a lot of what this agreement will entail, they say, will be defined later in a fund agreement. This fund agreement doesn't exist yet. So a lot of this mineral deal is really just an agreement to work out an agreement in the future,
Which
is
means it's all politics.
well, that again sort of more aligns with your perception of Trump's perception, because if he really was going to play massive hardball with Ukraine, I don't think he would have agreed to a deal so vague, right? It would have been more like, no, you give us your shit, right? It wouldn't be more like, well, we'll work out the details later. Like, this seems really more of just, maybe he went into it guns a-blazing and then sort of realized he needed to kind of walk it back a little bit. So maybe this is a little bit of like a face-saving deal for both sides here.
Yeah, that's what I mean by it's political. It's just
Right.
he needs to be able to come out and say, we got the deal. We signed the
Yes,
deal.
exactly,
Yes. So the deal needs to
exactly.
be super vague so that they can say, we signed a deal, even though the deal is really, we are agreeing to make a deal in the future that, may or may not materialize.
Right.
Yeah. He is coming to the realization that he has no leverage in this. So,
Well, he has leverage over Ukraine, but not over Russia.
I mean, I'm not even really, I mean, he has some leverage, right? But if the leverage that you have is an unthinkable option, do you really have leverage?
I guess you're right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. A joint ownership will take into consideration the actual contributions of the participants as defined in section 3 and 4. The fund will be jointly managed by representatives of the government of Ukraine and the government of the United States of America.
Filler.
Well, they're just saying that they're going to create some kind of fund and both America and Ukraine will control it.
I know.
More detailed terms will be worked out in this future fund agreement to be negotiated promptly after. Yeah, okay. The maximum percentage of ownership of the fund's equity and financial interest to be held by the government of the United States and the decision-making authority of the representatives of the government of the United States will be the extent permissible under applicable U.S. state law. Because there was originally like this whole thing about, U.S. wanted to control 100% of it and all this other stuff. And apparently, like, that was actually illegal according to U.S. law. So according to this deal, it's still unclear what exactly the maximum percentage ownership of United States stake in the fund will be. Okay. Number 2, the fund will collect and reinvest revenues contributed to the fund minus expenses incurred, relevant to all Ukrainian-owned natural resource assets, blah, blah, blah. Number 3, the government of Ukraine will contribute to the fund 50% of all revenues earned from the future monetization of all relevant Ukrainian-owned natural resources, whether owned directly or indirectly by Ukrainian government. And that kind of just lists all the different types of resources, as agreed by both participants, as may be further described in the fund agreement. For the avoidance of doubt, such future sources of revenue do not include current sources of revenue, which are already part of the general budget revenues of Ukraine. So they're basically saying any future mineral, oil, blah, 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 anything in the future that will come after that hasn't already been developed, that will be developed, 50% of the revenue of that will go into this magical fund. Okay. The fund, in its sole discretion, may credit or return to the government of Ukraine actual expenses incurred by the newly developed projects for which the fund receives revenue. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. That makes it sound like the fund can just start paying back the Ukrainian government for the expenses of itself. Contributions made to the fund will be reinvested at least annually in Ukraine to promote the safety, security, and prosperity of Ukraine to be further defined in the fund agreement. So they're saying annually, money from the fund will go right back to Ukraine. So if you're reading this so far, you're like, well, where is America getting the money? right? That's where I'm wondering. I'm like, where's America getting the money? Subject to number 4, subject to applicable United States law, the government of the United States of America will maintain a long-term financial commitment to the development and stable economic prosperous of Ukraine. Further contributions may be compromised of funds, blah, blah, blah. Number 5, the fund's investment process will be designed so as to invest in projects in Ukraine and attract investments to increase the development, processing, and monetization of all public and private Ukrainian assets. The government of the United States of America and the government of Ukraine intend that the investment process will lead to opportunities for distribution of additional funds and greater reinvestment to ensure the sufficient supply of capital for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Participants reserve the right to take such action as necessary to protect the maximum value of their economic interest. Number 6, the fund agreement will include appropriate representations and warranties, including those necessary to ensure that any obligations, blah, blah, blah. Number 7, the fund agreement will provide inter alia an acknowledgement that both the fund agreement activities provided for therein are commercial in nature. Number 8, the fund agreement will pay particular attention to the control mechanisms that make it impossible to weaken, violate, or circumvent sanctions and other restrictive measures, blah, blah, blah. Number 9, the text fund agreement will develop without delay by working groups chaired by authorized representatives of the government of Ukraine and government of the United States, blah, blah, blah. Number 10, the bilateral agreement and fund agreement will constitute integral elements of the architecture of bilateral multilateral agreements, blah, blah, blah. And then 11, the bilateral agreement is binding and will be implemented by each participant. So this is very interesting because actually, from what it sounds like this really what they just agreed to was that they were going to put 50% of their money into a fund that the United States will have some control in. But as of right now, at least according to this agreement, the United States doesn't appear to be getting any of that money. It seems like they're just going to put the money into a fund and maybe the United States can like pay American contractors in Ukraine, but it seems like it all so far has to be reinvested back in Ukraine, as at least according to this agreement. So obviously there's going to be more specifics in the fund agreement that follows, but as of right now, that's what it looks like.
Doesn't look like a great deal for America. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, it looks to be more like usually the way this works is that America doesn't do the colonialist thing where we say, hey, we're going to just like take your shit, right? That's not the way it kind of has worked in America for the last 50 or 60 years. Usually the way that we get money out of these countries is we basically say, you have to pay American businesses to help rebuild your country or to get at your natural resources, right?
Right.
And it seems like that this deal might be headed like now the way Trump was pushing it before was, and part of the reason I think a lot of people were balking at it was more like, we're just going to take your money. But now it seems like the deal's shaping up more to be in line with you, like what I'm saying, the typical agreements are where it's more like, well, you're going to pay American companies maybe to build up your country, fix your country, to get your resources, blah, 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 blah. That seems to be like reading between the lines here, what this deal looks like so far. That could all change. Maybe they'll actually come back with a future financial agreement and they will say, we're just going to take 50% of your shit. But as of right now, that's not what the deal says.
Yeah, we're going to give you a bunch of USD that you will then use to pay American companies to build your infrastructure. So we're basically buying the minerals or resources or whatever we want instead of just taking them outright.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's another article that kind of talks about this. It says, speaking Wednesday, Zelensky rejected the idea that his country is in debt due to foreign military aid. Allowing the deal to be framed around debt owed could be a dangerous precedent for other countries to try to set parameters that would force Ukraine to pay back aid that has not been considered as loans. It would have been a Pandora's box, Zelensky said. I will not agree for even 10 cents of reimbursement, he said. This is after they've already agreed to this deal. Zelensky also said he plans to ask Trump whether in the event the United States cuts aid to Ukraine, Kiev will be allowed to purchase weapons directly from the U.S., and if it will be allowed to use money from seized Russian assets to do so. So that's interesting. And that's another thing, too, that might come in. Now, maybe what they'll say is that future aid going to Ukraine after this point could end up being paid back through this fund. That might be something that comes in the future deal. We'll see. Let's see. Over the weekend, Zelensky warned that if Trump were to meet with, oh, I read that one. He would send a dangerous signal if he meets with Trump first, which he already did. So, okay, so that's where we are right now, which is kind of interesting.
So by late July 2023, the amount of frozen Russian assets held in these countries were estimated to be $335 billion. So that's a pretty big nut there.
Yes.
I thought it was about 300 billion.
Yes.
How much money does 300 billion? So they just freeze the assets and then they invest them in treasury bills and then the interest is like 5%.
Yeah, and they just take the interest essentially. Yeah.
Right.
So
Interesting how that works, right?
well, now fortunately, as I said, I think that because Pete Hegseth is a retard, he's unfortunately dropped, a lot of negotiating power with Russia in terms of NATO and other stuff. But I'm sure Trump will try to use and Europe will try to use these frozen assets as leverage to kind of force Russia to do what they want. Say, well, we'll give you back your frozen assets. Otherwise, we're just going to take all your money. So I don't know how badly they need that money, but maybe that will be persuasive.
Well, I think the money was denominated in US dollars. I think that's how we're able to freeze the assets, obviously.
Well, yeah, it's in US and European banks and stuff
Oh.
and assets. So that's why they could freeze it.
I wonder. Okay.
So I guess we'll see. We'll see in the coming weeks. Zelensky, I believe, is supposed to fly out to DC tomorrow.
I thought he was there yesterday.
I don't
He
think
wasn't?
so.
No? Okay.
No. And is supposed to sign this agreement tomorrow, I believe.
Right, yeah. They're supposed to do a face-to-face.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
He's going to get to tell him about the perfect phone call.
They'd be like, I was just joshing you about the whole dictator, right? I was just messing with you.
Look at this. It's a lot easier yelling at people on Twitter, isn't it? He's like, well,
classic.
when he's in my face in my Oval Office, probably won't call him a dictator.
Right. Okay. Well, since you were right about your prediction, we also have to bring out that I seem to be right about my prediction.
Is this the Kash Patel
This
prediction?
is the Kash Patel story, yes.
This is the pain part. We had the carrot, now we get the stick.
Well, it's the stick for you, but for me,
it's the carrot. Yeah,
they're both carrots. Listen.
So Kash Patel has been confirmed, right? Is he already?
Yes.
Is he already
head
going
of the FBI.
rogue? Yes.
Yes.
Well, and he's the head of the ATF too. I mean, they're making this guy the head of everything.
He's head. There you go. So I sent you the stories from the Washington Times.
Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of interesting. Supposedly, Kash Patel and the FBI is looking into some allegation that there's this whistleblower, this allegation that James Comey, the former head of the FBI, set up this dastardly plan in 2015, an off the books investigation that he personally funded or ran or was in charge of, where he was going to send 2 undercover hot female employees into the Trump campaign as a honeypot to try to infiltrate and seduce Donald Trump or seduce anyone at the Trump campaign in order to get information about whether they're really secretly working with Russia or something.
Trump's girlfriend?
Yeah, maybe she's the asset.
I was thinking of that when I read this story. I was like, what's going on here?
So I think there's basically no fucking way this is true. This is possibly true, but whatever. I'm sure Kash Patel will investigate it and do a very good job, thoroughly debunking or proving the legitimacy of this investigation into James
So you don't
Comey.
think James Comey hired 2 hot babes to infiltrate the Trump campaign?
No.
You don't think that's true?
I don't think that's true.
You think this is based off of the 2 hot babes coming forward and saying, oh, yes, of course, we were hired. We were totally hired.
I think some retard just made this up. Some quote whistleblower made this up. And I mean, listen, they want to investigate it, go ahead. But I think there's no fucking way this is true. So
That's kind of crazy.
what do you, I mean, you you seem to agree. You think this is probably not going to be true.
I know nothing about James Comey at all, so
Mm-hmm.
I don't. Yeah, I mean, it seems strange. I don't. Yeah, I don't know.
It seems silly.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, it could be true. James Comey could be a total slime ball. I don't know. I don't know anything
Well,
about him. What do you know?
I don't. My take on Comey is the fact that since he was willing to basically hurt the Democrats and Republicans in a way, like in a kind of independent way, makes me think that he's not doing things for political reasons. He actually was
Right.
doing things that he thought was right. Now he could have been mistaken, obviously, but that he was just trying to follow his moral compass because he did hurt both the Democrats and Republicans. He, a week before the election announced that they were, opening up the investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails again, which the Democrats hated, the Republicans liked, but then again, months earlier, and part of the reason he had said that is because months earlier he basically said that Hillary did break the law, but that if you looked at previous people that broke the law the same way she did, it did not warrant criminal charges unless you could prove malicious intent or malintent, which they said they could not prove. So that he recommended to not press charges against her, which the Republicans kind of liked and kind of hated because they liked that he said that she broke the law, but hated that he didn't press charges against Hillary for the email stuff.
So he comes off as a stand-up guy. So
He doesn't come off as a stand-up guy, but to me, he comes off as someone who is actually trying to look at things and act according to
That's a
what is
stand-up guy?
objectively accurate. So
That's a stand-up guy. We've got no evidence that he's done anything corrupt or lied or
not to
Or
my knowledge. And
changed
then
the facts or
Right,
did
but then
lawfare or anything like that.
right, and then obviously the Trump people really hated him because once Trump won the election, even though Comey probably helped Trump win the election, Trump had asked Comey to drop the investigations into Flynn, which Comey refused to do, and Comey interpreted Trump as trying to get him to sign some sort of loyalty oath pledge thing, which Comey also refused to do.
Well,
And
that's
so,
fine and upstanding. Obviously,
yeah, so obviously
that's a stand-up thing to do, right?
right. So
I believe in I serve the Constitution. I don't serve you,
right,
Mr. President.
right.
Well, look, you do serve Mr. President, but you serve the Constitution above Mr. President. If
Right.
Mr. President asks you to do anything unconstitutional, you say, no, Mr. President. That would be illegal.
Yep.
So
that's
it makes
going on.
makes it seem odd that he would also do something illegal, like
Or he's sending hot prostitute OnlyFans FBI agents to seduce Donald Trump.
Okay, so this
seems kind of silly.
So this is probably bad. This is probably.
It's probably. I assume it's not true. It sounds ridiculous. It sounds stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But so
God,
I'm waiting. We're still waiting for him to open investigations in the Shifty Shift and Liz Cheney, and then we'll be right on track. Okay, we'll be right there.
Yeah. I thought we hired Kash Patel because we were going to end the weaponization of the Justice Department. That was the mantra, right?
I mean, do we have to end it yet?
Just yet?
Can we?
Can't we get even and then end it?
Can't we use it a little bit for our side first?
Best to end it on an even note, right?
Right.
Well, when's even? That's the problem with all these feuds, right? When is even?
That is the problem. Yeah, exactly.
Nobody ever knows.
Okay, I sent you this article. This is kind of interesting.
Another article?
Yes.
Wow, all this reading today.
There was this accusation that's kind of fascinating. There's an accusation that the Trump administration tried to or did pressure the Romanian government to lift the travel ban on Andrew Tate and his brother. And Andrew Tate and his brother have since flown and now landed in Florida. I saw something saying they were going to Fort Lauderdale. I don't know if they're going to show up in Mar-a-Lago or something. I wouldn't be surprised. There are people in the Trump administration that are like massive Andrew Tate simps, which is fucking bizarre, honestly. And so this has caused a big kind of controversy and another split in some people on the right, because there's a lot of people like, you have Ben Shapiro and Jeremy Boring and a lot of other people in that at the Daily Wire who who are saying that Andrew Tate is a despicable sex trafficking rapist and the right should not embrace him. And then there's other people on sort of the more internet kind of pundit right that are saying, oh, Andrew Tate is based ultra, red pillar, so we should all, embrace him with open arms, essentially. Who cares the fact that he, probably is a rapist and a sex trafficker? That doesn't matter.
Yeah, I can't stand Andrew Tate. So this is just, I don't understand why Donald Trump is giving up political capital for this guy.
So, well, here's what I worry about for the Trump administration is, I think we had with Biden, and we had the left became way too internet brain rotted, where they would actually focus too much on what the internet left wanted them to do, and didn't realize that the internet left is a tiny, 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 but vocal and loud part of the population, and is not representative of America as a whole. And so I think that's where a lot of like the woke shit came in and gained a lot of foothold in the Democratic Party and government institutions, blah, 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 blah. I worry if the Trump administration will fall into that same pitfall, because you got Elon and you got Don Jr., who both seem to be completely, haven't touched grass in years, or totally internet brain rotted, who are very much in that space. And it would make sense, they kind of, Trump, I think, views a lot of his success for his election based on, streamers and the internet. He's kind of big in the cryptos, scheme, or this crypto scheme, the crypto scene right now. I guess there's no difference. And so I worry, because there is like a very strong contingency, or I should say a very strong collection of people on the internet that are like very heavily in love and simping for Andrew Tate, even though the average Republican voter would probably find him disgusting, distasteful, horrendous. So I worry that they might get sucked down into this kind of like following the internet rabbit hole too.
Yeah, we've been in the cultural environment where the left has cried wolf so many times on people that like legitimate wolves are getting a pass
Getting
now.
in. Yeah, exactly. Right.
Which is just sucks. Totally
Well, it's
sucks.
also, it's gross to me too. I'm gonna read this article in a second, because there is a dispute about the fact claims here, which is interesting, but it's also gross to me too, because it's very obvious that there are some people in the internet's MAGA pundit space that don't like Andrew Tate, but they're terrified of their audience who does. And so they try to walk this weird tightrope whenever they talk about him, where they're like, maybe I don't like him, but maybe he's not so bad, right? It's just, and I think that's pathetic. I think that's what allows the extreme or the bad elements to fester. And in the left or the right is people that are afraid of their audiences, like Hassan and people like that. So don't fall prey to that.
They have these giant audiences, and that has to be more difficult to sustain, right? If you've got an audience of 1 million people.
Well, it becomes like the prisoner's dilemma problem, because if everyone on the right turns against Andrew Tate because they all know he's a horrible scumbag, they're afraid that they're going to lose some big chunk of their audience, and then there's going to be some other asshole who's going to grift and pretend that he loves Andrew Tate just so he knows that he can grab onto this audience for his own financial future.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
So that's always what
exactly
happens
right.
in these situations. So, okay, the thing that's interesting about this article is there was a fact dispute here, because the original claim made by the Financial Times was that the Trump administration tried to pressure the Romanian government into lifting the travel restrictions to allow Andrew Tate to leave Romania and come to America. And the Romanian government supposedly said that that's not true. So let's see what this article says, because I actually have specific quotes here. They're kind of interesting. So first and foremost, it says, quote, "The Tate brothers still have judicial control, but they no longer have a travel ban. I believe that Andrew Tate himself, I don't know if he's just an idiot or a liar. I believe when he landed today in Florida, he made the wrong claim that they had dropped charges against him, which is not true. So no, they just released the travel ban. But it says, a week ago, the Financial Times reported the U.S. officials brought up the case of Andrew Tate and the brothers to the Romanian government. The two hold dual citizenship of the U.S. and the U.K. Blah, blah, blah. Romanian Foreign Minister Emel Herozinu has downplayed such claims. the claims that the Donald Trump administration urged Romania to ease actions against Andrew Tate, asserting that his government has not faced any pressure. He had met with Trump's special envoy, Richard Grenell, the past week. He said, quote, I did not perceive this statement as pressure, just a repeat of a known stance. How do you feel about that sentence?
Well, it sounds like the Trump administration is denying that they had anything to do with this.
No, that's the statement from the Romanian government official. I
Oh,
did not
okay.
perceive this statement as pressure, just a repeat of a known stance. So what that sounds very clearly to me was that someone from the Trump administration did talk to the Romanian government, did tell them that they thought that they should, drop the travel restrictions against Andrew Tate, maybe lighten up on the case. And they're saying, oh, well, I mean, he said it. I just didn't perceive that statement as pressure, right? So,
Oh, okay, I got
right.
it. So they did. So it's the opposite. The Trump administration did pressure them. They're just covering for them. The
Well,
Romanian government is saying we were going to do
right.
that anyway.
I'll leave it to the audience to decide whether they want to decide whether it was pressure or not. But the Trump administration definitely did have a conversation with the Romanian government about lifting these travel
And
restrictions,
look,
and they did. So
any phone call is going to be pressure. He called up specifically to talk about Andrew Tate. Come on.
was in it.
We
Yeah, it
don't,
was an
we don't want
in-person
to pressure
meeting.
you or anything, but
Right. Exactly. So I'm gonna say, yeah, they probably did pressure them. Okay.
Why does the Romanian government owe America a favor?
I mean,
They don't.
everyone
They
owes
just
America
want to
a
do a
favor.
favor so that we will owe them a favor in the future, right?
Well, I'm
God,
sure
it's so I can't stand Andrew Tate.
I know.
Just his stupid grin
And obviously
drives me crazy.
there's certain irony here. Here, let me send you a tweet because the governor of Florida actually released a statement about this.
DeSantis?
Yes, I sent it to you. It's a Twitter video, so we can watch it real quick.
Nice.
But it's also, there's a certain irony here because it was just today, I think like 30 minutes ago, that supposedly Pam Bondi has released some information about Epstein's client list or some list of names
I saw that was coming out.
associated with Epstein, has released them to some, they were described as ex-journalists. I don't know who these people are, but has released these names to some ex-journalists to go through and possibly post online. I don't know if they have posted them online. If they have, it's been right when we've been streaming. So obviously there's an irony that it's like all these people are like clamoring to release the names of Epstein, the Epstein list and all this stuff, while simultaneously defending Andrew Tate's despicable actions. So
more proof that X, the platform, is the worst branding known to man. Because saying someone is an ex-journalist sounds like they are no longer a journalist.
You're right. That's a good point.
Fucking idiot.
So I've seen a bunch of people that have just been posting like a long list of names. So I don't know.
On the Epstein list? Oh yeah,
I don't know if
everyone's
those
going
are
to
actually
pretend
correct
this is
or not, but
everyone is publishing their enemies list as the Epstein list right now. Are you ready? 35 seconds, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, go.
Whether they want to rebuff his entry into the United States, and I have confidence that whether it's Pam Bondi or Kristi Noem, that they will be looking at that. I do know our Attorney General, James Uthmeyer, is looking at what state hooks and jurisdiction we may have to be able to deal with this. But the reality is no, Florida is not a place where you're welcome with that type of conduct in the air. And I don't know how it came to this. We were not involved. We were not notified. I found out through the media that this was something that was happening. Whether they
Oh my God! If they arrest Andrew Tate and said, "Look, we're going to charge you on American soil," oh my God! And the
That'd be
Trump
pretty funny,
administration was
wouldn't
instrumental in
my
getting
God.
him here.
That'd be hilarious. Yeah. They didn't, I mean, they've already landed and were not arrested. So, I mean, at least it hasn't happened so far.
Well, look, they got to investigate him first, right? They got to find out if he's committed, if any of the people that were trafficked by him were Florida citizens or United States citizens, to get the feds involved. Can you imagine that?
Well, and it's interesting. I in the Trump administration, and this has kind of happened in the first term as well. There's a lot of people that just like do things and they don't communicate the idea of what they want to do to like the relevant parties before they do it. And
Mhm.
it really steps a lot of people's toes and it pisses them off. And I think like this Ron DeSantis clip is a perfect example of this. Because you heard what he said. He's like, well, I was not even notified of this. I just saw it on like the news. And that's got like all these people are very egotistical and they get very mad when they feel like somebody's, shitting in their sandbox without telling them first.
Yeah, you dropped a turd in my sandbox and you didn't tell me it was coming.
Right, right. They always get very mad. And it's interesting because it also reminds me of like, there was this sort of big back and forth between, Elon Musk kind of sends out that message where he just randomly emails all the people in the federal government, says, you need to tell me the 5 things you did last week or you're going to get fired. And there's a bunch of different heads of other departments who were, just appointed by the Senate, who are Trump appointees like Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard. And I think RFK, I don't remember, he vacillated, so I don't remember which side he ended up on, where they were kind of like, just ignore this letter from Elon. And there's very interesting in the press conference, like the date, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, where Elon was in the cabinet meeting talking, it came out that he like just came up with that idea on his own and he just emailed it to everybody without telling anybody he was going to do this. Okay. He didn't ask Trump. He didn't talk to any of the heads of any of his departments. Elon on his own just came up with the idea of this email and just emailed it to every federal employee, basically stepped on the toes of every boss of every federal employee, stepped on the toes of Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, all the people that are in charge of all these organizations now. He just stepped on all their toes and basically said, I'm going to take away from you I'm going to oversee, your responsibilities of firing people, essentially. So pissed all those people off with that email.
Yeah, that was a huge misstep, a giant, giant misstep. Showing up in the cabinet meeting wearing a tech support t-shirt was also I mean, I think you finally convinced me on Elon Musk, Sitch. I think that was a cringe level that
you didn't like the tech support t-shirt. That was it.
It's just, the right attire for the right situation. And that was just screaming like the wrong attire. It's just,
right.
Oh man. And it adds a level of unseriousness to the cause. Like Elon Musk is just completely inept when it comes to optics. Even what you're saying about the email thing, like he doesn't understand. He's autistic. He's basically autistic. So, and in the situation where you're the big boss running all your companies, sure, that can work. But it's sooner or later, Trump is going to see him as a liability. I don't know if you saw the interview with Elon and Trump, but Trump did mention his attire in the interview. And I could see Trump like trying to nudge Elon into, wouldn't this interview be so much nicer if you were in a suit and tie and looked actually professional? Wouldn't that be more well received?
Yeah.
Look, it would be more well received. I mean, there's a time for the Make America Great Again hat, right? When you're at a rally, not when you're in a cabinet meeting.
Well, I don't think
it's so tone deaf.
Yeah. I don't know if he would care about the hat. If he was wearing a suit and a tie and he had the hat on, I'd probably be fine with it.
The hat is still bad. I mean, he should he should be in his executive attire.
Right, right. But no, it is interesting because supposedly Trump is like a really big stickler for like clothing. And so, yeah, like Elon keeps showing up at the Oval Office wearing a t-shirt and he just wears kind of like this big trench coat thing so he can kind of like look a little bit presentable that he wears over the t-shirt. But yeah, I'm sure it's annoying him. It's interesting because again, you have to remember, all these people, when they get assigned to be like the head of, the Department of Health, the head of the FBI, the head of the State Department, the head of, the NSA, all these things, like all these people have like a big ego. They're put in charge of these positions. They think, okay, I'm the big dog now. And then essentially if Elon comes and he pees all over their face saying, no, I'm the big dog. I'm going to start firing your employees unless they answer to me. That's what happened. And it is kind of baffling to me that Elon didn't perceive that. Like, I guess that's the autism. He didn't perceive that all these people that Trump just appointed to these positions are going to get really mad at him, and essentially did get really mad at him. And Trump kind of like wiffle waffles on supporting him too, in kind of this weird way that he does. So I don't know.
Do you know that Trump
We'll see.
prodded him to do that? That Trump was the instigator behind that?
Yeah. So what Elon said, well, he wasn't the direct instigator. What Elon said was Trump told me to be more aggressive.
Yes, but it was like
And
on Twitter or something.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. On Twitter, Trump said something about like, you're doing great, Elon, be more aggressive. And then Elon's like, yes, sir. And so then Elon just sends out these emails without talking to anybody. And he's like, well, I mean, you told me to be more aggressive. I'm being more aggressive.
But
And there
that's
is-
like him super sucking up to Trump, like him
It
just
is.
trying to be
Well,
like,
There's this interesting thing that's happening. Now, I don't know, like a lot of the reporting is hard to tell at the moment how much of this is like real and how much of this is kayfabe, or astroturf, as they like to say,
mhm.
because supposedly a lot of Republicans in a lot of red districts are getting a lot of angry phone calls and having a lot of angry town hall meetings about people mad at all the Doge cuts and people not liking Elon. I don't know how much of this is like real. There's already been accusations that it's all being astroturfed by George Soros and all this other stuff. I don't know. I have no clue what the situation is on the truth claim of that. But regardless of the truth claim, there is a perception, it seems, in Washington that a lot of the Doge cuts are not popular. And I do get a sense from listening to Elon, and maybe I'm reading into this a little bit too much because he's just like a weird autistic guy. But I do get a sense when I hear him talk at these press conferences that he sort of seems to me to be coming off as kind of desperately justifying his position and desperately justifying his actions to Trump. Like, you told me to be more aggressive. That's why I sent out the email. I'm saving all these people's money. Why are you complaining about it? Like, it just seems like he's like in the situation where he's constantly feels the desire to like justify his actions.
Yeah, yeah. He likes to be in the center of power. Everybody does, even billionaires, right?
So, yeah, so we'll see how that all plays out.
Yeah, I don't see this ending well, not at all. So
And
I
other
don't-
news,
I don't know that they're gonna. I keep looking into like what the job cuts are, how many job cuts there are. So I do want to know.
oh, sorry.
I do think he's overpromised.
Yes. Well, and also there's this long story too, where in that meeting, Elon was talking about how they canceled Ebola prevention work and then they started it back up again. But now there's a bunch of people that are supposedly in charge of those programs or were in charge of those programs. And they're saying that Elon's full of shit and that they actually didn't restart the Ebola outbreak prevention programs. Or if they did, it's just like a shadow of its former self. So they're calling into question those, they're calling into question that. And then there's an article because there was kind of this pushback between Marco Rubio and Elon Musk, where, after they made all these cuts, Marco Rubio essentially said, we're going to, we're not going to cut things that are involved with saving people's lives and things of that nature. But there was a problem because apparently, this is from an article, it says, Marco Rubio's decreed that certain critical programs such as aid to Ukraine and Syria and costs related to PEPFAR programs to combat HIV in Africa would continue to be funded. Several times, U.S. aid managers prepared packages for these payments and got the agency's interim leaders to sign off on them with support from the White House. But each time, using their new gatekeeping powers and clearly acting as orders from Musk, one of his lieutenants, Faridator or Klinger, these are like those kids that everyone talks about or embedded in the Treasury, would veto the payments, a process that required them to manually check boxes in the payment system one at a time, the same tedious way you would pay your bills online. So there is already some massive, power struggle going on where supposedly there are programs in USAID that Marco Rubio has signed off on, the White House has signed off on, but some Doge, 20-year-old employee is nixing the Treasury payments. So I don't know how that's all going to end out.
This is like just such a philosophical disagreement because the right believes that the government is just, sipping champagne and eating caviar, and they have all these completely huge budgets. And everything I read makes it sound like they have no budgets. Like every time I'm in
Right.
a government building and you walk into the bathroom, you're like, wow, this place looks like shit. Like
Mhm.
it just doesn't exude, oh, we have a ton of money here, right?
Well,
So I
yeah.
what I don't know. There's a disconnect here. I saw people saying that they were getting fired and that they were working for the government because they felt like they wanted to do good in the world, and that they were making like half the salary that they could make in the private sector. Which
Well, that's a
that's the reality that I've encountered,
Yeah,
right?
because the thing is, and I don't think people will understand this, and it's weird because you're right. Like there is this perception that all the government employees are like evil and lazy, and I mean, I'm sure there are evil and lazy people working in every job, including the government. But a lot of
Sure.
them are people. First of all, a lot of I think the U.S. government employs more veterans than like a shit ton of veterans. Essentially, obviously, it's a massive organization, so it wouldn't make sense to say more than anyone else because obviously, but they employ a lot of veterans but then also and I don't think people understand this. My understanding is that most federal jobs, you're right, they do pay a lot less than the private sector. And then the offset of that is that you'll get better benefits, you'll get a pension, and you have better, or you were supposed to have better job security. And so
Right.
that might all go out the window now. So we'll see what happens.
In Clarence Thomas's book, he elaborates on this pretty explicitly because he works in both the private sector and the public sector.
Mm-hmm.
And every time he talks about working in the private sector, he's got like tons of money and like half of his time is free at work, and there's like way too many people hired. It's like,
Right.
and then every time he gets a job in the public sector, it's like 10 times more work than they can ever do. They're totally understaffed. They're totally under budget. Like he's not making any money. He can't pay his fucking bills.
Yes.
So it's just like if you map that experience, and this is Clarence Thomas, okay? He's
Right.
one of the most conservative justices on the Supreme Court, right? Why wouldn't he be saying it's the opposite if that's the narrative of conservatives, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I think there's a conflation of like, I'm sure the government does give too many bullshit grants to too many bullshit causes
in the private sector, they're nonprofits.
in the private sector, right?
Yeah,
But then
they're
people
private
yes,
organizations. Yes.
right. People
Where
conflate
they're
that.
paying everybody $200,000 a year to show up 2 days a week.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Cut that stuff. But this is the thing. I think they already went through those situations, right? With the US aid. Now they're like, oh shit, that didn't really save us a lot of money. So we got to start cutting these accountants that are being paid $20,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
No fucking accountant makes $20,000 a year, right?
Right. Right.
That's
yeah.
insane.
Right.
And you're not going to save a lot. God, it's so bizarre to me because like 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, Elon Musk was saying, yeah, human labor will become superfluous and we need UBI. And he's gone from that to, oh, let's just fire everyone, like make everyone unemployed, right?
Right.
The fuck?
Well, this is, I mean, unrelated to Elon. The head, Lee Zeldin, the head of who now Trump has put as the head of the EPA, has expressed the desire to cut 65% of the EPA staff.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what that looks like.
Look, you got to go in and look because EPA is tasked with these cleanup sites where they've just done horrendous things to the environment. What are the different places where they've had, like Flint, Michigan, where they had contaminated lead? I don't know if that was from.
I don't think the EPA. Because I think the state is supposed to deal with that. But if the EPA, if the
Okay.
federal government, they probably would have fixed it by now. But
Right.
yeah.
So if they're basically saying they're going to stop cleaning up these cleanup sites, nuclear
and also-
waste is going to go uncleaned up.
Well, and also just to make sure that there's not people putting toxic chemicals in your food, your water, and destroying the environment, making everything horrible.
Yeah.
So he's talked about he wants to cut 65% of the EPA. Apparently, the administration has instructed the Social Security Office to cut half of its workforce.
See,
which is pretty crazy.
I'm not opposed to any of these cuts. I just think show me the money. Show me the evidence. Show me
Right.
why we're cutting these positions. Convince me that they're superfluous, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just going in there on a gut vibe that, oh, the government is just wasteful. We should just
Yeah.
cut everything.
Right.
How do you know? And this is the thing. It's the easiest sell because so many people they believe the government is completely useless because they don't see it working in their daily lives when they're
Right.
eating that food that is not poisoned.
It's invisible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But going back to the weird thing with the treasury payment stuff, because this is like beyond the physical, like the philosophical. This is like some weird power play. Because you have a situation where Marco Rubio, who's supposed to be in charge
Of the State
of the
Department.
State
Yeah.
Department, who's supposed to have control of U.S. aid, said, I believe, with Trump's approval, that they would allow certain U.S. aid programs to go through. And so if he's saying, okay, I'm expressly giving or explicitly giving permission for these programs to go through, and then you have like these weird Doge 25-year-olds in the Treasury Department who are overriding Marco Rubio's authority here. I mean, that's obviously going to cause a very big dust up in Trump's cabinet. Like, what the fuck is going on here? Who's
see,
actually in charge here?
You got a bunch of hardcore libertarians who have no respect for authority whatsoever.
Well, I think they're just probably just going to do whatever, Elon tells them to do. And so they just don't give a shit, what Marco Rubio says. But so we'll see what happens with that. So this is a kind of scary thing. There was almost 2 plane crashes in the same day. I don't know if you saw this.
No.
There was almost 2 plane crashes yesterday, I believe, or the day before yesterday.
Same area or?
No, one was in Boston, one was in Chicago. The Chicago one was caught on camera. I don't know if the Boston one was because I haven't seen it, but here's the video of the Chicago one. So you see, he's supposed to be landing, and then he sees this plane taxiing on the runway and the perpendicular to it, about to cut him off. So the pilot, at the last second, pulls up to avoid crashing into this plane.
So this is air traffic control nonsense right here.
Well, maybe not. Okay, so he avoids the crash, and unfortunately, in the other airline story, they also avoid the crash.
Right.
But there is a story from the local Chicago affiliate here that says it actually might have been, even though it was the pilot that saved the plane, it might have been the pilot's fault in the first place. Okay. This is from ABC local Chicago. They say, let's see, it was a close call, blah, blah, blah. It says video shows Southwest Flight 2504 inbound from Omaha on descent to Midway, just 50 feet before touching down the runway, before it was forced to pull up after a business jet flying to Knoxville taxied right in front of them. The jet initially read back bad information. Midway Air Traffic Control corrected the information and warned the jet's pilot to hold position away from the center runway 31 at least 9 times, but the pilot appeared to ignore those instructions.
Okay. Wow.
The pilot of Southwest Flight 2504 performed a potentially life-saving go-around to avoid a potential crash.
Okay. Wow. So they gave him the information. He repeated back the wrong information and then proceeded to land. And they kept sending him, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah.
Right.
So thankfully on the 9th time it finally got through and he was like, oh shit, pull up.
Yeah. Yes. So I don't know what the
God,
fuck's
can you
going
imagine
on
being
with all
on
these
one
airplanes.
of these planes?
Yeah.
Well, of course it's DEI, Sitch. It's diversity and
Oh,
inclusion.
Okay.
They've got the blind wheelchair-bound pilot flying the plane now.
How do they have the wheelchair pilots fly the plane if they can't reach the pedals with their feet?
They have a special rig.
Okay.
They do everything on a game controller.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. Okay.
Oh, this is okay.
But anyway, fortunately, the disaster was averted. So
obviously, I'm kidding about the DEI thing, but are people playing up the DEI angle here? Or is
I
that
don't know.
just
I don't know if they know who the pilot is.
right?
So I don't know if they can point to the DEI angle, obviously. So if it's a white guy, it'd be more difficult to point to DEI.
Can you imagine being on this plane?
No, I don't know. You wouldn't notice. You'd be like, what? Like, you'd probably be like, what the fuck
You
just
would
happened?
notice. You'd be
No,
like,
I
"Holy
mean-
shit! I thought we were gonna land."
Yeah, like, no, I'm saying you would notice, but you wouldn't know why. You'd be like, what the fuck just happened? That was weird, right?
No, you
So-
would instantly know something was wrong.
Right.
I've
obviously, you know
landed on
something
a
was
plane
wrong.
like 100 times. Come on now.
No, I'm saying you would know something's wrong, but you wouldn't know that you almost fucking ran into an airplane. You wouldn't know why. You'd be like, what was that?
Why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you immediately jump to the conclusion that, oh shit, something fucking horrible almost happened?
So I guess
I
if
would. I would.
If you were looking, like whenever the plane lands, I don't like to look out the window, right?
Oh, I love to.
I don't, because it's like, listen, if you're gonna die, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't like prepare yourself. You can't jump. It's not like you're not gonna jump up as the airplane crashes and avoid dying, right? So I'm just like, I'm not gonna look. But yeah, so I guess if you were looking out and you had like an angle, maybe you could see that you'd see the plane pull up and you'd see another plane under you. You'd be like, oh my God.
If you're in the landing pattern and
Yeah.
you're going back up to circle
No,
around
obviously you know
again,
something's wrong.
I'm
You'd be like,
thinking
what the
like
fuck?
a fucking wheel fell off or something.
Yeah,
What the
right,
fuck
exactly.
happened?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what? The landing gear's stuck. Oh no, we're gonna be stuck. Up here.
Yeah, you immediately think this
Right.
is not good. This is
Yes.
fucking not good. I'm not
Yes.
getting on a plane again.
Right.
That's terrifying. And then you see this on the news, you're like, oh
Mhm.
shit. Too close for comfort.
No, actually, a passenger said that they said we didn't really think anything was like wrong. We just thought it was a normal situation that happens every day. So
Mhm.
someone didn't think there was anything wrong in the airplane. But you're right. I would think there's something wrong. I'd be like, wait, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
So
I would have yelled out, we're all gonna die.
that's probably not a good idea to do on the airplane.
I would have looked around and gone, look at all these fucking limits. We almost fucking
Okay.
died. None of them are aware of it. What's the meme where the guy's in the corner and everyone's dancing? I'd be like, we almost died.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm the guy in the
exactly.
corner.
Right.
They don't know that we almost died.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, is there another one of these? So there's another plane crash?
I don't think there's a video of it,
Oh, okay.
but there was another similar situation. So
Taxing.
yeah, I don't know what's going on with all these airplanes. I don't know why they're having all these problems. It's very weird.
Is this cutting the federal government? Is this being tied to that?
I mean, obviously, the people that don't like Trump are saying it's because I think they cut or they fired like 200 plus, air workers,
Right.
aviation workers. I don't know if that's. I mean, it seems weird if that would be like it happened like instantly. There'd be all these problems. Especially if this one is pilot error. It seems like it wasn't the control tower. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe these things happen every day. We just don't really hear about it. And it's only because like now that we're looking for them, we
Oh,
see.
yeah.
But
This is the hardest thing there are all these truth claims out there, and it's always hard to figure out if they're
Right.
actually true or not. Yeah.
okay, so some good news for the Trump administration. There's been some protracted legal battles between federal judges ordering that Donald Trump could not cut or freeze U.S. aid funding and other funding.
Mm-hmm.
And the Trump administration, so there was basically a federal judge, they said you have to unfreeze the money. The Trump administration just kept not unfreezing the money, and they kept coming up with different legal theories and strategies that they would argue about why they didn't need to. So a federal judge ordered yesterday at midnight, the Trump administration had to 100% last chance opportunity unfreeze the money. The Trump team said that wasn't like literally not enough time to unfreeze the money or do all the legal things required. And they went to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court ordered a stay. So the Supreme Court ordered the pause of the lower court, saying that they will now adjudicate the issue in the future, in the coming week.
So they can keep the money frozen until the Supreme Court weighs in.
That's probably what it looks like is going to happen.
Okay.
So that
God,
was
let's hope that's not the Ebola money.
yes.
That Ebola moves pretty fast.
So that's a boon to the Trump administration. Is they're gonna now that doesn't mean the Supreme Court's going to rule in their favor, but the Supreme Court is basically telling the federal judges to pause, to slow their roll, that they're going to hear the case.
Mm-hmm.
Then another thing that happened that was interesting, which I So I agree with this. It's kind of fascinating. Trump has come up with this idea of a gold card instead of a green card. Did you hear about this?
I did, yeah.
Yes. And so they have this idea that people, if they're rich, can just pay the United States government $5 million and they'll get their instant green card, or as they're calling it, a gold card. So the argument was basically there's a bunch of rich people who want to become citizens of the US. And if they all become citizens of the US through this like super fast track way, it would, create like $1 trillion in revenue from all these rich millionaires and billionaires who want green cards.
Yeah, I saw this and I immediately thought of you. I was wondering what your take on this was.
I mean, I'm fine with it. Who cares? Like as long as you check them out and make sure they're not terrorists or something, then go for it. I don't have a problem with it. Who cares?
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
It's money. I don't. I mean, the whole point of the process is like, when you're like trying to vet people to come to America, the thought process, you want to make sure they're not criminals, you want to make sure they're not dangerous people, you want to make sure they're productive citizens. Obviously, you would imagine that the majority of people that can pay $5 million to become citizens are more likely to be productive citizens who are not terrorists, are not going to cause problems in
I'm
America.
not. Look, if I'm a cartel leader, $5 million is like what I spend at the
Well, that's what
strip
I'm saying. You
club.
got to, as
Yeah.
long as you make sure that they're not like cartels and terrorists directly, I think you'll be okay. They still have to pass a background check, right? It's not an instant, just $5 million. Here's your gold card. So,
Right.
but I'm in favor of the program. Are you not in favor of the program?
I just selling United States citizenship.
It degrades the citizenship.
Well, at least I mean, saying your citizenship is worth $5 million. At least it's a high price point, right?
Exactly, right.
It
Yeah.
brings up the perceived value of American citizenship to $5 million.
Right.
That's not bad.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I don't
It's
know.
triggering your sanctity moral foundation here.
Yeah, look, we don't sell people, right?
Maybe we should. What do you mean?
Yeah. Do they get dual citizenship? Do they get to keep their old citizenship and they just have like an extra citizenship?
The exact terms have not been worked out yet and will be released in the coming weeks.
It's going to be like dual citizenship,
So,
which is even crazier. It's like, oh, look, you can pick up an extra membership here.
well, because it's not clear now within the $5 million, is it like, are they going to pay the government $5 million? Do they have to invest in a company? It's not clear exactly what that means. From the way that Trump talked about it, because he was talking about it going towards the debt, it sounds like he's saying they'll just pay the government $5 million. So there is an existing investment visa program people are comparing this to, though it is different. It's called the EB-5 program, where essentially what you can do is if you put, I believe it's $1 million in investment in a company and end up creating 10 new jobs, you can basically get fast tracked into being an American citizen. So that's like the comparable thing now. If they want to maybe replace that or add on to that, this new thing that's just, you just pay us $5 million. You don't have to invest in a private company or create jobs. Just give us $5 million and here's your gold card.
They just perceive of the U.S. debt or deficit as a big bill that they need to pay off immediately. And since they've all come from a business background, they think, oh my God.
We got to get money flown into the coffers. You're right.
Yeah, so that we can pay this off, so that we can be cash positive. But that's not how it works. That's so just not how it works. And look, Trump used to get that. Look, Trump understands debt. He uses debt in all of his business ventures. He gets it. He totally gets it. I'm not sure Elon Musk gets it. So, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
If you want to liquidate the assets of the private sector, get rid of the deficit.
Well, I know Stephanie Kelton, your monetary mama, is, she's been posting like crazy on Twitter talking about how she thinks that a lot of these new cuts and a lot of this ideas of the government, is going to basically cause a big recession in the coming year.
I think I agree. Yeah, I agree. It is for The reasons I talked about on our last show, that as soon as you start firing people, they don't have income to spend, and they stop spending at restaurants and businesses, and then those restaurants and businesses, they don't have income to spend.
Right, right.
So then they go under, they start firing. This is how a recession happens.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We'll see. Dan Iyer sent me something. This is a correction to the airplane story. It says that the tower wasn't telling the airplane that was landing to go away. It was telling the airplane that was taxiing to hold its position, and it was in the airplane on the runway was taxiing in the wrong lane, supposedly.
Oh, it was
So
the smaller plane that
it
they
was
were
the plane
yelling
that
at.
was on the ground that was at fault. Okay, the article was kind of not super clear which plane they were talking about was at fault. So okay,
So the landing plane had the right of way.
had the right of way.
Yeah.
Yes, the plane that was
Taxiing didn't have the right of
taxiing-
way and never responded to the 9 times.
Well, Dan Irish says on Twitter that they thought that they were on a taxiway, but it was actually a runway to land. So they were just in the completely wrong place, supposedly.
Mhm.
So, okay, well, that means that the pilot who landed the plane is a hero for essentially avoiding, crashing into that plane when they had the right of way. So good for them.
Yeah.
Now you have to look into the plane that was on the wrong runway. Was it a DI hire?
Mm-hmm.
You have to find that out. Okay.
Shall we read some super chats, or? Oh, I guess maybe we have more stories.
There's a couple more stories.
Okay.
I want to talk about the Republican budget story, which is kind of confusing. So
Yeah, so they got the tax cuts through, but aren't they still dealing with it in reconciliation committees? So I've watched a bunch of stuff on that, just because I'm always interested in the finance stuff. And
yeah, so
They-
there's like this weird
Go ahead.
thing that was going on, because essentially they were like, all the people on the right, not all people, some people on the right were all posting on Twitter, oh my God, the Republicans passed no tax on tips, and all the Democrats voted against it. And then the people on the left would say, there's nothing that says no tax on tips in the bill, you're full of shit. And then they'd also say, you're voting to cut Medicaid and SNAPs, which is food stamps. And then the people on the right would say, it doesn't say Medicaid or SNAPs in the bill, you're lying. And it's like, oh my God, what's happening here? Like, this is retarded. So
yeah,
apparently,
because the specificity of the cuts are going to go to committees, right?
yes, that's exactly it. So essentially what happened was they didn't pass a normal budget that just says, it lays out what everyone's supposed to do. What they passed was a framework that calls for $4.5 trillion in tax cuts and $2 trillion reduction in federal spending over the next 10 years. And it doesn't exactly lay out what those tax cuts or what the reduction in spending does, but it does say that certain committees, certain organizations in the federal government need to basically find the money. And so there is not, so this bill that just is passed did not pass no tax on tips. Now, maybe the individual people in the committees or whatever that come up with the tax cuts will try to throw that into whatever the bill eventually will look like. But then in terms of the cuts to Medicaid and the cuts to food stamps, they didn't directly cut any of those programs, but they did tell the head of the entity that controls food stamps and controls Medicaid and controls a few other programs that they have to cut $880 billion from the program. So obviously they're going to have to cut, food stamps and Medicaid and things of that nature.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the tax cut, though, I think is just renewing the original Trump tax cuts. That part is clear, right? It's the spending cuts that are the unclear part.
I don't even think the tax cuts are clear, because
Really?
I believe it calls for the 4.5 trillion tax cuts. People are assuming they're going to be the rehash of, I could be wrong, but I think they're assuming it's going to be a rehash of it's going to be a renewal of the existing tax cuts.
If they don't, we're all getting a giant tax increase under Bush or under Trump. Because
yeah, that's why they want to do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm so used to the Bush tax cuts everyone bitched about for fucking a
Right.
century.
I
The
know,
Bush
I know.
tax cuts, the Bush tax cuts.
Well,
Now it's the Trump tax cuts, the Trump tax cuts.
I'm trying
I
to
want
remember
to
what
keep my tax cut, you bitches.
it was funny because someone asked Trump the question and he was like, I'm not going to give you a read my lips moment or something.
Oh, Trump
So,
said that? Really?
yeah,
That's
yeah,
H.W. Bush.
that was H.W. Bush. So he was trying to avoid that.
He's like, no new taxes. Well, wait a
Yeah.
second here. Yeah. Oh man, if they screw over middle class workers to carve out the no tax on tips, oh my God, that's going to be such a like huge punch in the face.
Well, the interesting thing was it was a razor thin margin on that, even though it was just the framework, it was a razor thin margin, and they almost didn't get the votes. It was like 2017 to 2015 in the House.
Yeah.
All the Democrats voted against it. All the Republicans but one voted in favor of it. And originally there was a couple of Republicans that weren't going to vote for it because they were afraid of cutting of cutting Medicaid is what they were afraid of. Medicaid and
Right.
food stamps because they are in kind of purpley states, which obviously people would be very mad if you start cutting Medicaid and food stamps. And Trump promised he wasn't going to cut Medicaid, I believe. He said he wasn't going to cut Medicaid, Medicare, or Social Security. The Republicans, obviously, in Congress have a different plan altogether on what to do. Although there was also reporting that suggested that Donald Trump was personally calling the Republican holdouts in the House and trying to convince them, and did successfully convince all but one to vote in favor of this framework. So if this does end up having Medicaid cuts or even Medicare cuts or anything of that nature, it'd be very easy for the Democrats to point the finger at Donald Trump as being responsible. So
Yeah. Yeah.
the one Republican who didn't vote for this was actually Thomas Massie, who's normally someone I'm not a huge fan of, but I do have to give him a lot of credit for sticking his ground, standing by his principles. He didn't vote for the bill purely on the fact that it would create a lot more deficit. And so
Yeah,
he's the
he
guy.
wanted more cuts.
Well, he doesn't. Yeah, he wants more cuts, and I don't know how he feels about the tax cuts because he wants the deficit to go down. So
Yeah.
he was not a fan.
Yes. Yeah, I think this is gonna. I mean, I'm drifting into the recession camp that we're gonna have a nice big fat recession just in time for the midterms,
Right.
and that if Republicans are gonna lose the midterms because their handling of the economy was terrible.
Mm-hmm. And then the last story that was kind of bizarre was Christopher Rufo is claiming that he has a secret source whistleblower who came to him, and he posted a bunch of chat logs of it, that inside the NSA are a bunch of I would guess you would say LGBTQ plus IA individuals who are part of like a official NSA chat room. You know, all the businesses and organizations now, they all have like the various chat rooms that the employees use. And apparently they were using one of these chat rooms to have all these like weird conversations about like not work and not NSA stuff, but like weird, degenerate, like queer shit, essentially. It's the only way to describe it.
Right, and they all work for the NSA.
Yes.
Is it just the LGBT people who work for the NSA have their own chat room, or is it a public chat room for all of the NSA that?
Well, I think I don't know. I'm assuming it's anyone in the NSA could access it, but it was only like select individuals were using it for this purpose. Like other people would be like, I don't want to be in there, right? You want to be in the
Mhm.
furry LARPing chat room in the NSA.
I guess I do, to be honest with you.
Right.
I mean, I'm going to be a lurker in there. I'm not going to
Well,
be
I'm sure there are lots of
participating.
people lurking, right?
I'm not going to be participating in any of this degeneracy.
Right. So here's the article. This is from City Journal. They're saying Christopher Rufo says we have cultivated sources within the National Security Agency, one current employee, one former employee who has provided chat logs from the NSA's Interlink messaging program. According to an NSA press official, all NSA employees sign agreements stating that publishing non-mission related material on Interlink is a usage violation and result in disciplinary action. However, these logs, dating logs, Nonetheless, these logs dating back 2 years are lurid, featuring wide-ranging discussions of sex, kink, polyamory, and castration. One popular chat
Oh my
topic.
God.
I know, this is like ridiculous. One popular chat topic was male to female transgender surgery. And then there's, I'm not going to describe it, but there are people that were like explicitly describing their surgery and things of that nature and enjoying what it's like, I guess, to transition and stuff like that. So I don't know why this is in an NSA chat room. This is very bizarre. So it seems like, not to be, these are not topics that should be really being discussed at work. Work should not be a place for your social groups or you talk about, these sorts of things. I think it'd be weird if they had some sort of NSA group talking about like Star Wars all day. And it's like, don't you people work? Like, do that on
Yeah.
your own time, join a Star Wars Reddit forum or something or a Discord group on your own time.
Well, that's what I was thinking. There's got to be chat rooms for this kind of stuff outside of work. But I guess
Right.
it's like I work for the national security agent, and so do you. Let's meet up sometime.
Mm-hmm. Rufo's claiming that activists within the organization use these LGBTQ plus employee resource groups to turn their kinks and pathologies. Obviously, this is very biased in its framing into official work duties. According to the current NSA employee, these groups, quote, spent all day recruiting activists and holding meetings with titles such as privilege, ally, awareness, pride, and transgender community inclusion. And they did so with the full support of NSA leadership, which they declared that DEI was not only mission critical, but mission imperative. In this case, diversity was not a byword for radicalism, but rather a euphemism for sex talk. Last January, chat room members discussed their practice of polyamory or ethical non-monogamy.
Ethical non-monogamy. That's
Right.
hilarious.
Then it goes on to describe, people that work at the NSA explaining their ethical non-monogamous practices. So the former NSA
Ugh.
source who was familiar with chats recalled being disgusted by a particularly shocking thread discussing weekend gangbangs.
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ.
Oh. Are these do they actually work in an office together? Or these are just anonymous people on the internet that all work for the NSA?
Well, I don't think none of them are anonymous. I don't know if they all work in the same physical location, but they all work for the NSA.
Right. I'll be right back.
Okay. So that's that. It's a pretty disturbing story. Also, I believe the whistleblower was claiming, let's see, there's a further update. The whistleblower says there's a very small number of them, but they wield an enormous amount of power. And outside of the sick stuff, you also see a prevalent Marxist philosophy going on with these people in their chat rooms. They hate capitalism. They hate Christians. They're always espousing socialist and Marxist beliefs. I know several people at the agency brought that up, like, quote, hey, we're here to fight for the USA and go after the adversaries. And they just got hammered. They would just start coming out with transphobe and homophobe right away or calling you racist. And that's why a lot of folks are still hesitant to say anything because you still have people, these agencies in those key spots that infected everything. So I do think this obviously merits an investigation, and it should be pretty easy to find if all this stuff is on some sort of like chat server, chat log somewhere, especially if you have these people are being, decide this, the sex stuff is like weird and gross and like you shouldn't do it. But if they're espousing Marxist beliefs and they're attacking people that are saying, hey, at the NSA, we're here to like for the USA and go after its adversaries, and these people are attacking them for saying that, all those people need to be fired, have their security clearance revoked, need to be watched to make sure they don't sell secrets to our enemies, because obviously that's pretty fucking crazy if that's what's going on. So,
all right. That's an interesting perspective.
so okay.
We gotta put them in front of the anti-communist, the Americanism Senate hearing.
I mean, listen, if they're just being gross, I'd say like, okay, stop being gross or we're gonna fire you. But if they're like being Marxist, then I'm like, okay, you gotta get rid of them.
I
Gotta
love it.
fire
That's
'em.
where Sitch draws the line. He's like, you be as degenerate as you want, but you start dipping into the anti-Americanism.
There, exactly. Listen, I bleed red, white, and blue. Okay, I don't care what color your hair is.
That's the way it should be.
The way it should be. Okay. Sade Ray for 2 SGD says, how do conservatives justify Trump helping Tate? It's a good question.
He owns the libs.
That's the answer to the question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He owns the libs, and that look, you can get away with anything. You can, fucking child traffic anyone as long as you own the libs. It's disgusting. It's completely disgusting, and
Right.
shows a complete lack of principles. So
I believe Donald Trump has responded. Someone asked him a question today about this, or very recently, and his response was, "I don't know anything about that."
good, good. Thank God he's not involved in it. He should run from it.
He just said, "I know nothing about that." He said, "We'll check it out. We'll let you know." So he's claiming he has no knowledge of anything.
Do you think he does stuff and then there's like a backlash, so he just doesn't take credit for it?
I don't know. I don't know. There's a lot of, I feel like a lot of the Trump administration is very disorganized in terms of people just doing things on their own.
Right. Saying
So
Trump said I could do this.
right. So it is very possible that some weird Andrew Tate simps in the Trump administration just went off and did this without Trump knowing about it. It's possible. So, or maybe he
Wow.
did know about it. I don't know. We'll find out. I mean, if they show up at Mar-a-Lago, then obviously we'll be like, oh, that's interesting. That would definitely imply that Trump did know about it, but we'll see what happens. Epicureum for 18 months, thanks so much, says, I don't think they have enough young men to fight for 10 years given their demographic issues and casualty rates. Yeah, that, again, that argument makes a lot of sense to me, that they're just going to basically run out of people to just throw into this fucking meat grinder. So,
What are the? Yeah, I don't know the current casualty rates. So
right. The Red Dawn Batman for 2 Canadians says, wow, Adam, I never knew you were such a prude. Look at that.
I think it's context dependent, though, right? We're talking about the Oval Office or some cabinet meeting. Don't you think appropriate attire for the appropriate place?
When I'm president, I'm going to mandate that all women,
Mm-hmm.
no matter their role, their job, their position, their
Right.
age, they have to enter, when they enter the Oval Office, they have to be wearing bikinis.
Right.
Okay. Even the reporters, all the staff.
All necklines need to go down to the navel. All skirts need to be
Yes. I said bikinis,
at the
just
crotch.
straight bikinis. I don't care how old they are. I don't care what they're doing. Well, actually, okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Girls
Hi,
above
Nancy
the age of
Pelosi.
18. Hold on. Girls above the age of 18 have to wear bikinis. Okay. Under the
think
age they can wear whatever they want. Right?
Sitch is making my argument that this is just completely, totally inappropriate.
You don't want Nancy Pelosi in a bikini to stand behind Donald Trump as he signs.
I don't think
like legislation.
How old's Trump? 78? I don't think a 78-year-old man should be mandating that some 19-year-old intern wears a bikini in his office.
Oh, okay.
Oh God, that's just so cringy.
Adam's a prude.
That's the thing. I don't think you can define that as prude. Like if people want to wear that stuff out in public or to the nightclub or wherever, if it's an appropriate place, I'm all for it. Knock yourself out.
Right.
Just there's a certain etiquette that goes in business settings, and politics is like a business setting.
Boo. Boo. You have to have all. We got to have all the gilfs. Okay, all the gilfs in the White House wearing their bikinis, Adam.
Oh, so wrong.
Right.
That's so wrong. Well, Andrew Tate will be right at home then.
There you go.
In Trump's White House.
Fondue for Joe says, Adam can't keep getting away with this.
What am I getting away with? What did I get away with?
There you go. You got to apply it to everyone, man and women. The men have to wear banana hammocks. That'd be intimidating, right? That'd be intimidating to like our adversaries. They like turn on the news. They see like everyone in the Oval Office is just like barely wearing clothes. They're discussing like foreign policy and shit.
All the French prime minister leg touching.
Yeah. Oh, that would add a whole new level to all the touching. Yeah, you're right. I like it. Sam Josh for 16 months says, off topic, I didn't vote during the election. Am I allowed to criticize Trump's policies? Also, if SHTF, am I responsible as much as MAGA? Why or why not?
I don't know what SHTF is, but look, if you want to complain about Trump's policies without voting, knock yourself out. Look, I didn't vote for Trump. I didn't vote for Kamala either. I left the top of the ticket blank. So, but I'm going to complain, obviously.
Yeah, you're allowed to complain about whatever you want.
Republicans have a very intelligent economic business perspective. Like they do understand economics from a business perspective. They don't understand it from a macroeconomics perspective at all. It's fucking, they are clueless, completely clueless. And look, I understand a bunch of you probably share that cluelessness, but
Right.
I mean, there, I think the evidence is in, especially with Clinton balancing the budget, that basically caused a .com bubble to burst. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Oh, I think is shit. If shit hits the fan, am I responsible? I don't know if like it's kind of weird. I don't know. I wouldn't say like every person that votes for like if everything like collapses or just shit does hit the fan, it's weird because there's like some contingency of Trump voters that are like they're not trolls in terms of like the monarchy shit. They're like, I want King Donald to like fuck my wife and to rule over America. I think those people are the minority of the Trump voters. I say that like if shit goes crazy, you can blame those people. I think the average Trump voter, they don't think that. They just think, oh, things were bad under Biden, things were better under Trump. You know, immigration's a huge problem. You know, the world's falling apart, inflation's a big problem. I'm gonna go give Trump another shot because he seems to be running things better. And I don't think those people are to blame if like everything falls apart and Trump does a bunch of bad shit. So
yeah, he's doing great stuff on the wokeness stuff. Obviously,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'm in favor of all of that
right,
stuff.
right.
I just, yeah, the economic stuff. I mean, they're basically just making decisions based on ideology. When I think you have to kind of survey the environment and say, here is where we are economically in the business cycle, and we need to act accordingly from that location in the business cycle. So obviously, you do different things when you've got a good job and like a big income and stuff like that, and you do different things when, you know, you just got fired and you're trying to make your money last until you get your next job, right?
Right.
You're, as a person, you have different behaviors in different economic cycles of your life. So, but I think Republicans, they don't understand that business cycle from U.S. government or the macro perspective. So
Mhm.
they make bad decisions. It's so ironic too, because it's like,
Well, I think
if
it's
they
just
just framed it a different way, they would make better decisions.
right. Well, it's just being stuck in sort of assuming the government is run like a business financially. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I don't think it's possible to shake people from that frame. I
No,
think
you
it's literally
can't.
impossible. So,
Yeah, you can't. They'll never get it. Yeah.
yeah.
The one place where, because everybody says you don't, like, you can't spend in a downturn. Like, the time to spend is when you've got a big surplus of income.
Mhm.
That's like so backwards. And if you just reframe it to the time to buy big is when stuff is on sale, right?
Right.
When you can get stuff on the cheap, then you're overlaying the business attitude to actually government spending. So in a downturn, obviously when a recession hits and everyone's unemployed, you can get labor super on the cheap, right? That's the
Right.
time to buy labor, right?
When you have
That's
to
the time to
compete.
build bridges and
Right.
yeah, when you go ahead, when you have
Yeah,
to
when you have to
compete.
compete, that's labor is very expensive. That's not the time to spend. So.
Yeah, exactly. So when the economy is screaming, right? Everybody's employed, unemployment is at 2%. That's not the time to spend because labor is super expensive. That's the time to pull back. But a lot of people have it backwards. They think, oh my God, well, tax receipts are huge because everyone's employed and they're all paying massive amounts of taxes. So we've got all this income coming into the federal government. We should use that income to spend. Well, all you're going to do is drive wages up, right? Obviously, look, you yourself have been, I'm sure all of you listening have been in the job market before, and when unemployment is super low, you've got a lot of leverage over your boss, right? You're like, look, I'm getting like 15 different job offers here. I could go work someplace else and make twice as much money.
Right.
Like when unemployment is 8%, you don't have that leverage. You're like, oh, I'm just keep my mouth shut and staying here as long as I can, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
So this makes sense to people, but they don't put it together in the macro perspective.
Josue Callejo, I can never say his name right. Callejo for $20. Thank you so much. Says update. The spirit bomb of employment goodwill has hit. I landed a full-time assistant professor gig teaching theater, history, and literature at an amazing school. Thank you. S-Class and A-Team, keep fighting the good fight. Well, look at that.
That's great for you. That sounds like a super fun job, too.
I'm so glad the spirit bomb of employment, goodwill, and free will was successful.
Yeah. We all did that together, guys.
We did.
That's the S&A community.
Everyone in chat, take a little applause, pat yourself on the back, because we did good. We did good. Spencer Harmon, thanks so much for the 34 months of Discipline Equals Freedom. Says the Epstein files have been distributed. Yes, they have.
Look at this.
We will see. I don't know if we're going to really see anything
Who is
of
on it,
value,
though?
because it's probably just going to be a bunch of names, and people are going to go, "What do those names mean?"
Yeah, but you want to know.
Yeah, but it's going to be like, is that someone who flew on a plane? Is that
Bill
going to be someone
Gates
who
is on
fucked
it, right?
a child? Like what is this? What does these names mean? So, yeah, I don't know. We'll find out. I'm sure it's going to cause a lot of controversy.
Bill Gates is on the list, right?
I'm sure like 90% of all famous people are going to be on this stupid list.
Trump is definitely not on the list. You think they'd drop the list if Trump was on the list?
I don't know. I mean, Epstein claimed that he was like really good friends with Trump. So
yeah, there's a bunch of pictures of him with Trump as well. So
I don't know. It would be weird if he wasn't on the list. I guess as I said, depends what the list is. Is it supposed to be a list of just people he provided sex to with, or is it supposed to be a list of people that like visited the island? I don't know.
I thought it was a manifest from the airplane or something.
People keep saying it's the client list, which makes it sound like it's salacious, but I don't know. Maybe they're just wrong. But I'm sure we won't find out. I'm sure we'll get a bunch of names with not a lot of context, and everyone will forever use it to.
He's a money manager, so what kind of client?
Yes, we'll see. Boba Peck for 31 months. Thank you so much. Says, I got the comic, guys. Excited to read. Sitch, you taking Sammy on a lovely date to the Florida Man games this weekend. S-Class gets the best ass. Ahem. Has the most class. Thank you.
Nice. Look at that.
Right.
The
Florida Man games. I've never even heard of this. What is this? The Florida Man games. Where is this?
Sounds like something exciting that you have to do in Florida.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I hadn't heard about this. Sam hadn't heard about this. I'll check it out. Thanks for letting me know. Sounds interesting. Jim is Prime for 5 Aussie bucks says saying no to NATO off the bat, completely undermining Putin's reason for war. It takes the talking points off the table if he still refuses peace. Yeah, but that's what you do in the negotiation, is that you say, okay, we'll give you that in trade of something else. Taking it off the table before you even get to the negotiating table means Putin's going to ask for something else. You have to understand, when you enter the negotiation, Putin has to walk away selling this as a win to his people. If Trump's team is already saying NATO's off the table, then he can't say, well, I got them to not join NATO. That's not a win, because everyone says, well, they already said that before you even negotiated, obviously. So that's how it would work. That's why you don't say that beforehand. That's why you use that as a negotiation tactic. So then Putin could sell that to his people, to his power brokers, in terms of his success.
That he got this big win. But
yes.
I think that's not, I don't think Putin is going to go back to his people and say, I'm afraid of NATO. That's why I'm skeptical of that.
Right. Mac and Cheese Enjoyer for $10 says, just got my comic in the mail. Thanks for the last, fellas. Great podcast to get me through my 8-hour shift. S-Class is the best custom. Well, thank you.
Thanks for ordering the comic. Look, I'm going to close the comic campaign on Sunday. So Sunday will be your last day to actually buy a comic, just to let you know.
Right. Sketch for $5 says, Trump admin being fans of Tate plus Elon Musk quote retweeting Grums. Yes, we're living in idiocracy now. It's funny.
Grums.
I didn't know Elon Musk. Grums is a weird guy. He says things I both agree and don't agree with at the same time. So
I don't even really.
He's like he was a WoW developer. He's been very anti-woke for a long time, which I appreciate. Noel Screaming to the Void for 15 months. Thanks so much. Says, remember when I said 2 days, today's GOP aren't conservative or even right-wing? Andrew Tate fanboys are the exact case for this. Trump is still a Democrat. I mean, I don't agree with that at all. Just considering it seems like so much of Trump's guiding philosophy and a lot of the people on the MAGA movement's guiding philosophy is whatever enrages the Democrats, I'm in favor of. That seems to be like a big chunk of what's going on here in terms of at least the vibe of how people feel. So how can you be a Democrat if your entire vibe goal is based off of making those people see and cope? Doesn't really make any sense. And
Slashing the
people,
entire federal government is not a Democrat move either. Like
yeah,
so far away.
right. Completely just, trying to gut so much of the government. It's very anti-Democrat. Um, no, but in terms of the Tate thing, I mean, I agree with you. Obviously, Andrew Tate is not conservative whatsoever, and the conservatives that support him are massively hypocritical. But this is what happens. This is the odd bedfellows that people make in pursuit of power and influence. So, El Caliso for $5 says, I don't think Elon has authority to fire people. He's just saying who's respond. It's up to the heads of the department to fire people. Well, I guess the thing is though that he should really, before he sends out that email, first of all, he kind of made it sound like he was going to fire people. And then secondly, Doge does seem like they have the ability to just start cutting funding and firing people left and right anyway. And if he wanted to do this sort of coordinated effort with the department heads, he should have had a meeting with those department heads and said, hey, do you guys sign off on me doing this? Not just kind of doing it and basically overstepping all their authority. So,
Yeah, he doesn't have any respect for the scale of the operation. He thinks what he's done at one company that does one thing can be mapped onto the federal government, which does hundreds of things, if not thousands of things, right? It's insane.
Loser for $5 says the government purges are not economic, they are political. You must trim the fat and deadwood of the lib shits in the system to get things done. I think it's both. I mean, there obviously have been a lot of, trying to get rid of people that they view as political or people that they're afraid might be political. It's obviously happening. But a lot of it does seem to just be like, just saying like, I'm just going to cut, budgets 50%, 60%. I mean, that's not necessarily political. That's just economic at that point. Or you could say it's political, it's ideological, I think is probably the better way to say it in terms of just the ideology that the government just is bad and sucks and shouldn't exist or should be significantly smaller.
I don't know why you can't frame it to Elon. Like it cost him a certain amount of money to do a SpaceX launch. Could you do that for 50% of the funds? Probably not. Like, why can't you just pitch it that way? Like, if I said, okay, continue doing as many launches as you're doing, but do it on 50% of the money, he'd laugh in your face. He'd be like, oh, well, that's impossible. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But he just has this idea that, oh, we can do all of the nuclear waste management for half the money. How do you know that? How the fuck do you know that? They did the same thing with the Pacific Palisades, right? They're like, oh, we'll just take $18 million out of the firefighter budget. That won't do anything, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Next thing you know, the whole fucking city burns down. Oh, oops. I guess we needed that 18 million. Oopsie.
Oopsie. Yeah. Well, listen, you just fix it, right?
But that is Elon's mentality, which is fine for a place like Twitter, okay, where people's accounts get hacked or, they lose service for an hour, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not fine in situations where lives are on the line, right? Nuclear waste, air traffic control, Ebola, literally Ebola.
Right.
So he's not perceiving of the stakes. Look, and I think if you mapped it onto the SpaceX situation, he would immediately understand the stakes, right? He'd be, well, even those rockets are unmanned, right? They do everything robotically. They don't have human beings on them. So if they come falling out of the sky, it's just money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Part of the interest in the Elon Musk situation was, I know Elon Musk is a very smart person, and I thought maybe he'll be able to figure it out. Maybe he'll start to understand the gravity of the situation, but no, it seems like he's not going to understand the gravity of the situation ever.
Right.
which is scary. I think we're due for first of all, the stock market is like massively overvalued. Like it's amazing how high it's managed to go in irrational exuberance of Trump getting elected. I'm thinking we're due for a correction. We'll see what happens with the tax cuts.
Mm-hmm.
If a bunch of rich people get massive tax cuts,
People
the
won't be
stock
happy.
market goes higher. Well,
Well,
because
people-
no, rich people don't have anything to
Yeah,
do with
yeah,
money
sure.
than put it into the stock market. So
Right,
that's what
that's true.
drives the inflated prices for stocks and houses and all that kind of stuff.
Giant Boy for $10 says, I've been subbed to Adam longer than Sitch. Sitch has a catchphrase for me. Banner Bender House. I donated to the comic twice, was a member for years. Why isn't my name in the community in the comic?
Because I couldn't use the names from the Indiegogo campaign because I would be doxing you. So I didn't want to put real names in the comic. So I just used screen names that were members of the channel. So, and you're not a member of the channel, obviously. So you didn't get
Sorry,
in there.
Johnny
So,
Boy. Yeah. But
Yes.
do apologize for that.
Yeah. Sitch apologizes for that. I feel
Adam
bad
doesn't.
about it. I feel
apologize
bad
for
about it, but
Adam doesn't like apologies.
look, if you want to reach out to me, we'll make sure we get you in the next one. So
Gene payment for $5 says, so what are the actual air accident numbers for the last, say, 16 years? Is there an increase, or are we just hearing about it this year? Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know about 16 years, but there was an analysis that says that Trump actually saw fewer aviation accidents in his first month of his second term than any other president did in their first month.
Oh,
which is
really?
interesting. Yeah, supposedly. So it says Obama in his first month, see, it says, where's the number here? There's 88 aviation accidents in his first month. Trump had 85 in his first month of his first term. Biden had about 61 in his first term, and then, or I guess his only term. And now Trump in his first term has about 48 aviation accidents. So there's been less aviation accidents in Trump's first term, but there's been, I think, because that so many people died, that like the fatality numbers, or like the proportion, I should say, like the ratio of deaths to accidents is probably higher, even though there's been less accidents. So that's probably why people are paying attention to it now.
All this just seems like noise.
Okay.
Well, I mean, unless you can find some sort of causal connection to something
Well, no,
Trump
it's
did,
just-
I mean, why are we
right,
even
but
talking about it?
Well, it's just an interesting question in terms of, are there more accidents happening, or is it just the perception because people are focusing on it? Right?
Yeah, that's
So-
what I mean by noise.
It seems
People
like
are
it
just
seems like it's
focusing
the
on it.
perception of people focusing on it. There actually aren't more accidents, but it's just because one of those accidents had a really large death toll right in the beginning that people are now focused on it. So
Right.
to answer the question. Brian for $10 says, this is more common than most people realize. There's a decent number of near misses like this. DI actually played a role with the FAA turning down applicants based on race currently in court. Yeah, so I was wondering is just that this happens somewhat frequently, unfortunately. So Caroman 502 for $5 says there were 1,150 aviation accidents in 2023. They claim there are more this year as a result of the frequency illusion and nothing real. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Electro for $5 says, Adam, quote, that's a pretty big nut. And now I have a funny clip.
I did say that.
Right.
I think that was Putin's nut, right?
Yes. Filthy Casual for $5 says, I've worked for the federal government for years, both as an employee and a contractor. Friends and families who do too. Efficiency ranges a lot in my experience. That
There
makes
you
sense.
go.
Yeah, that makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. I'm with everything. Yeah, sure. RBJ's fan for $5 says, here's the evidence, Adam. And then there's just like a bunch of numbers. I don't know.
18.4, 1 trill, 19, 5.3 trill, 27 or 27.7 trill, nearly 2x in 7 years. Are you talking about the expansion of the money supply? Talking about the expansion of the debt? I mean, look, It's so funny. We should actually talk to people about this because they don't, people don't realize that the money supply needs to expand. Like, I get it that the money supply expanded too fast, too quickly, right? And obviously you're going to get price inflation when that happens. But you can't take that reality and say the money supply, we need to shrink the money supply to zero. Right, Sitch? Does that make much sense?
It does make sense. Yeah.
How do you think we would fare with no money supply?
I don't think we would do well.
Yeah. Well, actually, the money supply, there still would be money in the fact that people could take out loans, and those loans, when they pay back, the money would be gone. Anyway, we're talking about credit creation.
$1 trillion interest payments.
Look, I'm not in favor of the. Yeah, look, the interest payments are making when Elon Musk talks about the interest payments being government spending that is too much. Interest payments are basically like UBI for people who already have money. It's basically giving money to rich people, proportional to how much money that they actually have. So it's the most regressive spending we can do, interest payments. So I'm not in favor of those either. But those are because interest rates are high. Obviously, if interest rates were slashed down to zero again, would we be making those huge payments on our T-bills, Sitch?
No.
The answer is no. Yes. So you could double the deficit and you would still not be making interest payments. Anyway,
Ace for
continue.
$15 says, guys, please continue milking Tiny for his bad takes. He did a video on Bill Maher's appearance on podcast
Pod Save America.
Pod Save America. And I had no doubt he said some stupid stuff in it. It is related to the trans youth debate. Tiny was awful to you guys, so you should milk him for as many super chats as possible. Well, thanks for the heads up, because I was planning that we were probably going to watch some of that on Sunday. Not Destiny's response, but the Bill Maher on Pod Save America was like very interesting. There's a part where I'm alone. Okay. Sammy's not even at home. I'm alone and I'm watching. And I had to pause it and just start shouting to no one. I was like so enraged by what I was hearing. Because it was
people believe all this bullshit, Sitch.
I really don't like that Pod Save America guy. He's like the stereotype of condescending, retarded, smug, libtard coastal elite who's so doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about, so completely detached from the conversation, so tribal brained that they cannot see, it's like he's like being like stabbed in the back by a fucking communist and he's like still defending him. It's disgusting to me. But anyway, so we'll probably watch some of that on Sunday.
Sounds like great content.
I'll see if Destiny has responded to it, because that'd be interesting if he has like a shit take to it. Electro for $5 says, oh, whoops. Now Sitch is stealing quotes from Full Metal Alchemist. I always steal quotes from anime. What do you mean? That's like my brand. But thank you. Loser for $5 says, whenever Adam mentions macroeconomics, I remember Nasheed Talib's quote, it's easier to macro bullshit than to micro bullshit. Most macroeconomics is bullshit.
Okay.
Fabra Matthew for $5 says, hey, longtime lurker, was wondering what you guys' opinion was of the current 9 lawmakers pleading SCOTUS to end same-sex marriage. I'm gonna be real with you, I didn't even know that was going on.
I didn't either, but look, I'm not in favor of that. Obviously, I support same-sex marriage. I think if they, kiss goodbye the midterms if they overturn same-sex marriage. So
yeah, that'd be a really retarded idea.
You're taking the Democrats who are completely uncompetitive right now, and you're actually making them competitive again.
I know. Dick in the also, it's going to put the Republicans in a horrible situation.
Oh yeah,
because they like to have this sort of like, well, the courts decided it.
Yeah, exactly.
We're just not going to talk about it anymore. They don't want to actually have to adjudicate on that one. So
they all want to say, oh yeah, it's horrible, but we lost this one, so
right.
Let's move on.
Dick in a Box for $5 says, just got the comic and I realized Adam's name is the same as the DC superhero. Very good art, by the way. Worth the wait.
Thank you.
There
Yes.
you go. Glad you liked it. Gavatron for 7 Canadian says, if Trump is on the list, we would know before the election. Oh, maybe.
They would give it as an October surprise, I think is
Right.
what he's saying.
Yeah, I understand what he's saying. Adam Gadbot for $5 says, Russia has done so poorly in this war that a year after the invasion started, the U.S. military announced its shifting focus to the Pacific. There you go. Oh, whoops.
They got them outmanned, I think 10-1. So they can kind of do a shitty job and just overwhelm them with resources.
Thought for $20 says, you guys have a totally unrealistic standard for Elon to perform to. Do you two think he would be flawless? It's like a big hunk of meat, boys. Elon isn't a perfect trimmer. You're going to cut some meat with the fat. Well, there's two things. The first is we understand, and we've said this from the beginning, that I understand that Elon's going to have this completely wrong, retarded attitude that he has with business, where he's like, I'm just going to make these massive cuts and then try to fix things after they're broken, which I don't think works when it comes to the government. I mean, we'll find out. We're going to find out in this coming term whether it all ends up working. Elon Musk is, 4 years, nothing's broken, everything's working. We're saving money. He's going to be hailed as a hero, or if he's going to cause a massive recession and everything's going to fall apart and people are going to start dying. So we're just going to have to see how that shakes out. I'm more inclined to believe it's not going to shake out well, but we'll come back to this conversation once that occurs. In terms of the cuts, in terms of the sending out the email, I mean, that's just retarded thought. You have to, that one is beyond the pale, because that one, he doesn't even have an excuse of like business versus government. Even from a business perspective, that's so obviously such a retard thing to do, to step on all the other people's toes like that. And he should have obviously seen that as causing conflict among the people in the Trump administration. And so that's just retard levels of autism. And again, and as I said in the other streams, my big problem with Elon is it's not even the cuts. It's just that he's constantly promoting shit on Twitter that's not fact checked, that turns out not to be true. And so, I mean, listen, you can bend over backwards, you can give up every excuse imaginable that you want for him, but I'm just he's in a position of power. He should not be spreading misinformation. It's pretty simple. To me, it's pretty simple, but
yeah, at a certain point, he's not just trimming fat; he's cutting off fingers. And I don't think you can just cut off fingers. And I mean, sure, you can sew them back on, right? But
they're not going to work as good once you sew them back on.
Yeah,
we'll see. Loser for $20 says, lighter note, I saw a Watchmen movie last year. Aesthetics were cool, but Rorschach was comically exaggerated caricature of a right wing. Writing was hit and miss. Some historical narratives have not aged well, like Nixon being bad. Well, first of all, the historical narrative of Nixon being bad, that's literal brain rot. I mean, you have to believe the most retarded conspiracy theories to believe that shit. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic. In terms of the writing, even though I don't like the Watchmen movie that much, I believe Rorschach's writing in the movie is pretty spot on to his in the comic. And yeah, the way he's written in the comic is a very, very caricature. Obviously, Alan Moore, very, very left-wing guy, does not like people on the right. Seemed to be very mad that people liked Rorschach or as a character. Not that they liked him as a character, but they kind of agreed with a lot of his stances on things. So that portrayal is accurate, but yeah, it is a very caricatured version of somebody. I like his character though. Sometimes I think having these very strong characters works in stories. Because in fact, to me, the three best characters in Watchmen are Dr. Manhattan, Rorschach, and the comedian.
Yeah.
Because they're very strong characters, they're very interesting characters, even if they're kind of unrealistic. Where the more quote real characters like Owlman and Silk Spectre, they're so fucking boring. I hate them as characters. I don't find them interesting. And I think that's one of the biggest problems to me for Watchmen as a story, is that so much of the story focuses on Owlman and Silk Spectre. And God, every time I start reading about them, I'd be like, no, go back to one of the interesting characters. So.
Yeah, totally agree.
Hennessy for 35 months says, Gary versus Dave Rubin on Piers Morgan's show was an interesting segment. Y'all should watch it. I'll check it out. It's a really weird mix and match. A team on the A train. Whoop, whoop.
I sent that to you, Sitch,
Yeah, I
and
didn't watch it yet.
we did talk about it.
We did? I didn't watch it. Gary talking to
Oh,
Dave
really?
Rubin?
Gary
We talked to,
from Gary's Economics. I can't remember his
oh,
name.
oh,
We
oh,
did
I
talk
thought, no,
about
no,
it.
no, 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 no. I think Neurotic was talking to Dave Rubin.
Oh,
I thought that's what
really?
he was talking about. Or maybe he
Gary
meant Gary.
versus no, I thought.
I thought I saw Neurotic on recently. I assumed he meant
Well,
Gary
let
from
us know,
Neurotic.
Hennessy. You mean? I think you mean Gary. I don't remember his last name, but
Oh,
he,
okay. They were both on the same show. They had Gary from Gary Economics and Gary of Neurotic were both on the
okay.
same episode.
It's
But
a
I stopped
mystery.
watching.
We'll never
I stopped
figure it out.
watching after. No, I mean he must be in Gary because Dave Rubin wasn't on the second part. No, actually, the clips of Gary talking to Dave Rubin were very interesting, and we'll probably watch some of that on Sunday too because their
Okay,
conversation was
great.
very
Yeah,
interesting.
because that
Yes.
conversation drove me insane
Yes,
because they start going after Gary about, why don't you just donate all your money to the poor and shut the fuck up? And I'm
completely
like,
missing the point of everything.
yeah, it's
you were
like
saying.
it's a prisoner's dilemma. It's like, okay, so you take one person out that's driving up the price of all the assets. It doesn't change the fact that the asset prices are still going to go up. You guys are fucking missing the whole point.
Right.
You got to take the spending power away from all the people that are driving up the asset prices. So, yeah, look, I read Gary's book. Gary's book is super interesting, and I do watch his channel. So, and I do think he's right betting on the collapse of America.
Sadly, yeah.
Yeah, very sadly. So, but look, if you guys just get on the gold standard and cut government down to like 3
Nothing.
people,
Yeah.
everything will work out. Everything will be
Everything will
great.
be fine,
Yeah.
of course. Yeah.
You just keep thinking that.
Robert feeds the machine for $5 says we are under monetizing U.S. citizenship. We should be doing a subscription plan for those nepo babies and find a way to put in ads too. I like it.
I just
That's
it's
a good idea.
the commercialization of citizenship. How does
This
that
is your
not
right wingerness coming. Your sanctity is being triggered here.
how
The
does
sanctity
this
of
not
American
get,
citizenship.
yeah, well, it's usually the right wingers that are revolted by the commodification of everything, right?
I know.
I mean, how is this not the Catholic Church selling indulgences, right? Oh yeah, you want to go fuck a bunch of hookers? No worries, just
There you go. Interesting.
give the Catholic Church some money, and we'll give you some more Hail Marys, and you can still get into heaven.
Right.
Doesn't matter about your infidelity. You don't even have to be a good person to get into heaven. You just got to be rich.
There you go.
It does cement that narrative too that rich people are good people, but I mean there are good people who are rich and there are bad people who are rich. Obviously, there's a bunch of rich people that have ill-gotten gains. So I'm glad we're watching some of that Gary economic stuff because I think Gary's argument for tax the rich, I don't think is the right argument. I think you're better off going into limiting the resources that people can buy. Like that would be, I think, a better plan.
Well, just to tell people for Sunday, because we will watch, we are going to watch the Bill Maher thing, and then and then we'll watch the Gary thing afterwards. So I definitely will watch it. To me, the thing that's interesting about the conversation is essentially not any policy prescription, but he's basically just explaining why things are heading the way they are economically. And it's fascinating to me that him just explaining why things are the way they are, like ultra triggers Dave Rubin and ultra triggers Pierce Morgan, because they basically see it as like an attack on themselves because they're rich.
Well, it gives them cognitive dissonance. They can't, it completely goes against Dave's worldview. Like Dave's worldview is we just need to get rid of the federal government and then everything will be fine. That it's the government that's causing all of this difficulty.
Right.
Like how is the government driving up the price of houses to the point where normal working people just can't afford a house?
Right. Well, the argument be, oh, it's all the regulations, right? And it's like, well, is it, or is it all the private, businesses buying up the housing stock?
Yeah.
So it's a combination of those two things. But no, it's basically he just lays out, what Jordan Peterson always lays out. He just lays out the 80-20 Pareto principle and says, well, okay, obviously you're just heading for the situation where the 20% is going to keep sucking up things unless you do anything about it. Dave Rubin and Piers Morgan go into full cognitive dissonance mode. And it's kind of frustrating because they just don't even listen to what he's saying. They literally
don't listen to the argument.
listen
Yeah.
to what he's saying. They can't perceive the words that he's saying. It's very
Yeah.
strange. It's very interesting. So I usually like Piers Morgan, but it was not a great showing from him. So we'll watch it.
Yeah. Look, if we are in a situation where there is no middle class, there's only rich and poor, I'd rather be rich. I
Of
would.
course. Who wouldn't?
I don't
Yeah.
know who wouldn't want to be on the rich side, right?
Well, and some criticism of Gary, I think he's right, but I don't think he handled himself correctly in the
Oh, not at
conversation
all.
because he
Yeah.
kept getting sucked into these like irrelevant arguments that they kept throwing at him. So
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
Salah for $2 says on Destiny, if the leak was from her devices, that proves Destiny gave it to her. If the leak was from his device, then he's innocent of giving pictures without consent. I'm aware he admitted on Discord, rip Gene Hackman. Well, I'm assuming that the leaks came from her devices. I don't think that's up to question. But yeah, there's this crazy story. I don't know if you saw it. Gene Hackman, his wife, and one of their dogs were all found dead today.
I saw that. I was like,
Yeah.
what the fuck happened?
And at first I just assumed it was like, because I saw he was dead. I mean, he's like really old. He's 95. So I assumed it was he just died. But then the fact that his wife, who's 64, and one of their dogs also died seems to be very strange. People are obviously pointing to wondering if it's carbon monoxide, because usually if you have like three different people or three animals, I should say, or two people and one animal dying in different locations of a house all at the same time with no apparent like struggle, people usually point to carbon monoxide poisoning or something to that effect. But
Yeah, if it's an accident, that's super, super sad.
yeah, so we'll see. I'm sure we'll get more details on that, but that is very unfortunate. So Gene Hackman's a great actor.
True.
Okay. Yeah, police are saying no foul play so far. So anyway, thank you guys for coming. Thank you all for incredibly generous donations, and we'll see you all on Sunday.
Yeah, and I'm going to close the campaign on Sunday. So I can't continue to be taking orders in and sending them out piecemeal. I'm almost done. I think I only have like 300 packages left to mail, plus whatever comes in until the campaign closes. So sign up if you want. Take care, everyone.
Later.